Chapter 3397. The old monk's words were close to Sanskrit. Not to mention Xiaohua was not here. Even if Xiaohua was here, he would not be able to hear it clearly. After the old monk kowtowed, he shakily walked out of the main hall and came to a small hut. The hut was very simple. There were only a few old wooden cabinets. The old monk fumbled around in the cabinets and took out a black wooden box. After opening it, there were more than 10 boxes inside. Most of these boxes were empty. Only the bottommost boxes had a few thumb-sized black beads. The old monk stretched out his shriveled finger and took out a black bead. He slowly put it in his mouth, but after hesitating for a moment he put it back into the box. His turbid eyes seemed to be staring at a certain place in the air. After a moment of pause he picked up the bead again. After a few times, the old monk finally put the bead back into the box. His mouth trembled as he whispered, "Namo Maitreya Buddha, disciple asks Buddha for forgiveness." After saying that, he closed the wooden box and put it back into the wooden cabinet. Then he slowly walked out of the hut. Xiaohua naturally did not know that Tantric Buddhism had always thrived in the snowy mountains. Their living environment was the most bitter and cold. In order to reproduce, in order to cultivate Buddhism, it was impossible for them to forbid meat and marriage. Xiaohua wanted to refine Buddhism's cultivation method and become the future Buddha Lord. It seemed that only by shaving his head and becoming a monk could he truly learn the true essence of Buddhism. In this way, this Tantric Buddhism branch was suitable. Moreover, the exquisite leaf scripture was originally the cultivation method of the future Buddha Lord. This exquisite leaf temple had been waiting for Xiaohua on the snowy mountain for tens of thousands of years. Everything seemed to be a matter of course. However, Xiaohua, who was flying in the air, was actually moving very slowly. He could not help but think in his heart, this Xiao just came to ask for directions. Really just to ask for directions. I don't have any other thoughts. How could I encounter such a strange thing?" Although Xiaohua had already used divination to convince himself in his heart, when he thought about how he was about to become a monk and become the future Buddha Lord, which was more powerful than Guanyin Bodhisattva, he could not help but mutter in his heart, "This exquisite leaf temple. It was actually built 10,000 years ago just to wait for this Xiao? 10,000 years ago. Even I don't know where I was. Since this Buddhist sect senior from 10,000 years ago already knows of this Xiao, then, does the current Buddhist Lord also know of this Xiao? Besides, although I've been expelled from the Imperial Thunder sect, I'm still a genuine disciple of the Tao sect. What's the point of shaving my head? Even Frost Bamboo didn't really shave his head to become a monk, right?" Xiaohua had already thought of this before, but now he couldn't help but think about it carefully. This was because the thought of running away in Xiaohua's heart was growing stronger and stronger. If he wasn't soft-hearted and couldn't bear to see the old monk's sincerity, he would have already run away in a sorry state. The key point was that Xiaohua didn't want to hurt the old monk's heart. And even more, he didn't want to fail to live up to the painstaking efforts and expectations of who knows how many generations of Shaolin Long Temple's abbots over the past 10,000 years. Xiaohua really wants to run away. The temptation of exquisite leaf temple is too great. Not only are there Buddhist scriptures and secret techniques of the Buddhist sect, there are also so many relics. If Xiaohua has these things, the cultivation of the Buddhist sect will definitely skyrocket. However, although Xiaohua is greedy, he still can't bear to blacken his heart to such an extent when it comes to the painstaking efforts of others over the past 10,000 years. He uses his own false thoughts to swindle others and swindle them to pretend to be some future Buddhist lord. Go? Or not go? Xiaohua's heart was still wavering even when he flew above the hot spring. To go or not to go is really a difficult problem, making it hard for him to make a decision. The hot spring in front of him is several zhang in size. It is on the side of the cliff between Exquisite Leaf Temple and the foot of the mountain. The hot spring is filled with steam, melting all the snowflakes that originally fell into the hot spring into threads of water. The threads of water slowly fall down and merge into the unceasingly rolling water surface, disappearing in a moment. The water of the hot spring is azure. Between the rolling water, it is like a boiling crystal. Near the hot spring, there are many spiritual herbs, swaying under the steam of the hot spring. Further away from the hot spring, and several zhang above the hot spring, there are piles of several feet of snow. The white of the snow and the blue of the hot spring complemented each other. It looks very pleasing to the eye, like a brilliant green bead inlaid in a white jade. Wonderful. Xiaohua is vexed. Seeing such a refreshing scenery, he unconsciously claps his hands and praises. Then looking at the clear hot spring, he really has the impulse to take a bath. Let's go and wash, perhaps my mind can calm down a bit. Xiaohua's figure descended. Standing at the edge of the hot spring, he shook his head, as if he wants to shake off the depression in his heart. Roar. At this moment, a tiger's roar suddenly came from the distant mountain path. Then, a gust of wind blew, causing Xiaohua to wrinkle his brows. When he raised his eyes to look, at the foothills of the mountain about several zhang away, a white tiger of several feet in size stepped on the snow and rushed over. Wherever its four hooves passed, huge plum blossoms fell on the snow one after another. Humph. Seeing that it is just an ordinary white tiger and has not become a spirit, why would Xiaohua be afraid? He also didn't release any pressure or Buddhist sense. He only stood there and coldly watched. Who would have thought that the white tiger would fiercely rush over? Its fierce and dignified tiger eyes swept over Xiaohua. It only stared at him for a moment, then unexpectedly shook its head and wagged its tail as it walked to the other side of the hot spring. It opened its bloody mouth and swallowed several stalks of spirit grass growing on the side of the hot spring. Then, it used its claws to wipe its big mouth. Like a cat, it rolled a few times on the other side of the hot spring. Then, it stuck out its tongue and licked a dozen or so drops of congealed hot spring water on the spirit grass on the left side. Then, it actually roared a few times at Xiaohua. It cheerfully explored some kind of rhythmic pace and quickly walked away. Xiaohua, who was standing at the edge of the hot spring, was somewhat stupefied. In his eyes, these ferocious beasts. Which one of them wasn't vicious? Which one of them didn't pounce on a person when they saw him? Which one of them didn't want to feast on a cultivator's blood essence? This white tiger in front of him. Could it be that its nature has changed? It doesn't eat meat anymore? It doesn't want to drink blood anymore? Paradise. Paradise. Suddenly, Xiaohua was somewhat enlightened. A person's paradise naturally has no sorrows, no worries, and no worries about life and death. Although there might not be such an extreme paradise under the Buddhist sect, beasts don't eat humans, and humans don't eat meat. I'm afraid it's possible to achieve one or two. If the Buddhist sect really has such a great ability, then what can I do even if I shave? Xiaohua had heard a lot of Taoist slander about the Buddhist sect on the Xiaoyu continent and the hidden immortal continent. He also saw the Confucian cultivators' disdain for the Buddhist sect, and even more so, he saw Frost Bamboo's cunning and Xing Chen's hypocrisy. He already had a prejudice against the Buddhist sect in his heart. Now that he suddenly saw the old monk's piety and the white tiger's obedience, he couldn't help but have doubts in his heart. He even had the thought of using other people's stones to polish jade. But when it came to the crucial moment, shave, there was still a knot in his heart. What he wanted was the Buddhist sect's cultivation method, not the Arhat's cultivation method. But if he didn't shave, he wouldn't be able to obtain the Buddhist scriptures and secret techniques of the exquisite temple. Of course, Xiaohua could also obtain the Buddhist scriptures and secret techniques from other places, but hadn't the exquisite temple's Buddhist scriptures and secret techniques been waiting for him for 10,000 years? How could Xiaohua not feel conflicted? Xiaohua, who was struggling in his heart, took off his clothes and fell into the pool with a plop. Xiaohua, who was standing outside of the mysterious dark clouds, could sense Little White's urgent breathing and dragon roar. Chapter 3398. Jade Archive. Xiaohua was even more surprised. If Xiaobai's soul cultivation had improved, Xiaobai would definitely not be so excited. There must be some kind of mutation in the ninth heaven of Lingyuan. When Jade Archive Xiaohua flew into the mysterious dark clouds, the lightning on the surface of the dark clouds flashed, and the broken threads also swayed. The difference was that Xiaohua deliberately avoided the aura of desolation, but it still uncontrollably attacked Jade Archive Xiaohua. Of course, Jade Archive Xiaohua did not care about these attacks at this time. His figure disappeared into the mysterious dark clouds. When he flew into the Ingshire sky, he saw that the whole Ingshire sky was brilliant. Thousands of green seal characters sometimes gathered, and sometimes dissipated. When they dissipated, each green seal character was like a speck of particles. Wind, rain, thunder, and lightning swayed between these particles. When they gathered, they emitted a power that shook the earth and mountains. The huge mountains and rivers were faintly discernible, just like a boundless world. Good, Jade Archive Xiaohua could not help but praise, looking up at the sky above the Ingshire sky. Previously, Xiaobai had said that there was a seal on the upper level of the Ingshire sky, which made Xiaohua depressed for a long time. Later, Xiaobai said that he was wrong. Now it seemed that Xiaobai must have made a new discovery. When the Jade Archive Xiaohua flew past the countless soul threads that resembled a jade green ocean, an incomparably huge dragon body was coiled in the sky above the jade green ocean. Above the jade green ocean, there was an enormous grayish-black dark cloud that was as heavy as a mountain. This dark cloud seemed to be connected to the surface of the mysterious dark cloud. There was lightning and broken threads. The only thing missing was the heavenly runes and earth deed of the heavenly might. These dark clouds were also like solidified waves. A terrifying aura was emitted from the inside. Even Jade Archive Xiaohua could not help but feel a chill. This Jade Archive Xiaohua looked at the dark clouds with some surprise. This should be the 5th layer of the 9th heaven of Lingyuan, the channel formation sky. But why was this layer so different from the other 4 layers? Fellow Taoist, please follow me. The Soul Cultivator Xiaohua appeared next to the Jade Archive Xiaohua. After raising his hand in salute, he flew towards the dark clouds. Puzzled, Jade Archive Xiaohua followed Soul Cultivator Xiaohua into the sky. Before long, they had reached the edge of the dark cloud, where there was an enormous space. This space was gray and misty, and strands of dark green light wandered beneath Soul Cultivator Xiaohua's feet. Large green seal characters were constantly bursting out from within the light. Oh, this is the same as the previous 4th heaven. Jade Archive Xiaohua seemed to have understood something. He nodded and said, Fellow Taoist, what you mean is that outside these dark clouds is the condensed meridian sky. Then what are these dark clouds? Even as he spoke, Whitey's enormous draconic body flew over. Green light flashed around its body, and a Xiaohua that looked exactly like the Soul Cultivator Xiaohua appeared in front of him. You! Jade Archive Xiaohua was stunned. It seemed that Whitey had never transformed into his original appearance. How could it do so today? Jade Archive Xiaohua couldn't help but cry out. How can you transform into I's appearance? You're a soul? Not an ordinary body. Xiaohua's smile was far more brilliant than the Soul Cultivator Xiaohua's. Proud and excited he shouted, Xiaohua. Of course this poor Taoist knows that. Not only are people's souls different, but it's also impossible for 2 identical souls to exist in this world. Furthermore, this poor Taoist isn't a human, and his soul is even more different from a human's. There's no way this poor Taoist can take on a human form that looks exactly like you. But I can transform into you now. Also look at him. Doesn't he look a little different from before? With that, Whitey pointed at Soul Cultivator Xiaohua. When Jade Archive Xiaohua's gaze fell on Soul Cultivator Xiaohua's face, Soul Cultivator Xiaohua's rigid face suddenly blinked at Whitey, and then the corner of his mouth slightly rose, unexpectedly smiling. A Jade Archive Xiaohua was stunned. Smiling bitterly, he cupped his hands towards Soul Cultivator Xiaohua and said, Congratulations, fellow Taoist. Now you're even more like I. Fellow Taoist, what kind of medicine are you selling in your gourd? Why are you still hiding it from I? Haha, Soul Cultivator Xiaohua laughed and said to Whitey, This is all thanks to fellow Taoist. You should ask him. Hurry up and transform back. Jade Archive Xiaohua looked at Whitey, who was winking at him, and helplessly scolded. You are you, I am me. Is it fun for you to transform into my appearance? Ah, yes, it's fun. Little White Xiaohua laughed heartily. He pulled Jade Archive Xiaohua's hand and said, Come with me, I'll show you something interesting. After transforming into Xiaohua, Whitey's personality seemed to have changed. He was much more quick-witted than before, which made Jade Archive Xiaohua quite happy. The 3 identical Xiaohuas flew over the mountain like dark clouds, and arrived at a very ordinary place. Whitey smiled and said, Xiaohua, take a look. What's different about this place? Jade Archive Xiaohua looked left and right, but couldn't see anything different. Shaking his head, he said, I can't see anything different. Haha, I knew it. He definitely can't see it. Whitey laughed and clapped his hands, looking at Soul Cultivator Xiaohua. Soul Cultivator Xiaohua said unhappily, if I can't see it, he can't see it either. Soul Cultivator Xiaohua opened his mouth, and a strand of soul flew out of his mouth. Whoosh! A dark green light flashed, and a dozen or so strands of soul came out of the dark cloud. Xiaohua, come with this poor Taoist and take a look. Whitey rushed over and landed right in the middle of the soul strands. Its entire body once again transformed into its dragon form. As soon as the soul strands were retracted, Whitey immediately disappeared into the dark clouds. The lightning and the broken strands did not stop it. Oh. Jade Archive Xiaohua looked at Soul Cultivator Xiaohua and asked, can it be that we can only enter through these soul threads? Are the other places the same? Soul Cultivator Xiaohua nodded. That's right. Whitey has been hovering under the dark clouds for many days, and only then did he discover the secret inside. You'll know everything once you enter. Okay. Jade Archive Xiaohua didn't ask any more questions. His body floated up and landed in the middle of the soul threads. The soul threads were like antennae, and Jade Archive Xiaohua immediately entered the dark clouds. The surface of the dark clouds was the same as the layers of the 9 heavens of spirit origin. They were all made of soul threads, but the soul threads here were somewhat black and mixed with lightning. When Jade Archive Xiaohua passed through the surface of the dark clouds, his vision turned dark. This place was different from the 9 heavens of spirit origin. However, when Jade Archive Xiaohua looked up again, there was a faint light of the moon and stars in the darkness. Borrowing this light, Jade Archive Xiaohua saw that this was a curved space. Xiaohua, come up. Whitey's voice came from the top of the space. Jade Archive Xiaohua obeyed and flew up. It was very strange. This space was different from the 9 heavens of spirit origin. One didn't need to rely on the depth of a soul cultivator to fly high. Moreover, as Xiaohua flew higher, the space around him became bigger and bigger. After flying for a while, Jade Archive Xiaohua still couldn't see Whitey's figure. However, waves of coldness inexplicably emerged from the surroundings. This coldness was like a cold wind blowing on Jade Archive Xiaohua's body, making his muscles and bones weak. Moreover, after flying for a while, Jade Archive Xiaohua felt even more limp and numb, making Jade Archive Xiaohua feel very uneasy. How is it? Whitey's dragon body appeared about 10 zhang above Xiaohua's head. Do you feel like you're going to be blown away? Indeed, Jade Archive Xiaohua didn't hide it. If I fly any higher, I won't be able to bear it. Look at that place again. Soul Cultivator Xiaohua also flew up and pointed his finger at a distant place. In the night sky, which looked like the mouth of a well, there were 2 faint green lights. One was like a half moon, the other half was blocked by the edge of the night sky, and the other half was a complete star shape. Spirit, looking at the moon shape in the distance, Jade Archive Xiaohua felt something and nodded. This is the green seal character Spirit. That's also the green seal character Spirit. Soul Cultivator Xiaohua didn't find it strange. He pointed at the green seal character that looked like a star and said, this should also be one of the 9 heavens of spirit origin, but I don't know why it's so strange. It's more than strange. Whitey hurriedly said. It's simply strange. Oh right, Xiaohua. Do you remember when I told you that your meridian condensing heaven might be sealed? And I naturally remember. Jade Archive Xiaohua nodded. At that time, I had a feeling of oppression, an intuition that I couldn't break through the barrier between the 2 heavens. But I could. I tested it a little with him and found that although there was an extremely oppressive feeling, the barrier between the 2 heavens could still be broken through. That's why I told you that I was wrong. Indeed, Jade Archive Xiaohua seemed to have understood what Whitey wanted to say and nodded with a smile. But when I followed him to the meridian condensing heaven, there was this dark cloud above our heads. All the oppressive, dense, and sealed feeling from before came from this dark cloud. Whitey explained again. I stayed here with him for a long time, but I couldn't find the secret inside. Therefore, he went to cultivate and comprehend the bone joints, and I searched here. I don't believe that there's something in this world that I don't know. White Ease, I was extremely similar to Xiaohua's. Jade Archive Xiaohua almost laughed out loud. But I searched for a long time, but I couldn't find it. But just a few days ago, the entire dark cloud suddenly boiled and swelled, and an extremely bright light of the stars and the moon came from the place where we came in. Little White said proudly. As such, I hurriedly flew over and found that there was a crack there. Just as I arrived, the crack started to shrink, and by the time he arrived, the crack had already disappeared, and not a single hole could be seen. Fortunately, he could use the soul strands to guide the soul strands out. And when I touched those soul strands, my whole body immediately shrank and was pulled in. Hee. After I came in and was illuminated by the light of the stars and the moon, I could transform into your appearance. Chapter 3399. I can also smile now. Soul Cultivator Xiaohua also said with a smile. Jade Archive Xiaohua frowned as he listened, then looked up at the two spirit characters in the sky. He seemed to have thought of something and said in a low voice. Previously, I remembered that there was a saying of 3 spiritual souls and 7 physical souls in this world. But when it comes to soul cultivators, there are only 3 spiritual souls and 6 physical souls left. The 9 heavens of spirit origin has 9 layers, and this layer is probably the hidden layer, right? There are 2 spirit characters in this layer of heaven, which should be the 2 characters of Yin and Yang. It should be called the Yin-Yang spirit sky. This layer of heaven has stars all over the sky, so it's also very good to call it Star Splendor Heaven. Soul Cultivator Xiaohua suggested again. Jade Archive Xiaohua didn't care about the name of this layer of heaven, but he asked curiously. However, within the 6 heavens of spirit soul, there are 50 green seal characters in each layer. Why is there only 1 in this layer of heaven? Could it be that this is one of the 12 missing green seal characters? Soul Cultivator Xiaohua also frowned. I'm afraid so. Jade Archive Xiaohua nodded. This spirit character is not simple. When Little White arrived here, he could use his spirit to transform into a spirit soul. And fellow Taoist also has a spirit. As for I just now, I also felt as if I was enlightened. The reason why my human race is the spirit of all living things is probably because of this double spirit sky, right? Extremely so. Soul Cultivator Xiaohua said with a smile. Others who cultivate the 9 heavens of spirit origin can't see the situation of each layer of heaven, so they naturally can't sense this Star Splendor Heaven. As for our opportunity, Little White really found this place based on his feelings. That's right, it's an opportunity. Jade Archive Xiaohua sighed. The vibration just now was probably because I advanced to the nascent soul stage and caused a phenomenon in the sky. This double spirit sky had its own changes, so Little White discovered something strange, right? This is Xiaohua's opportunity, and also the opportunity of all fellow Taoists. At the same time, it's also I's opportunity. Little White said with a smile. When I flew in, there was a lot of heaven and earth spirit energy, abnormally abundant. Moreover, the starlight in this heaven and earth spirit energy was very bright, flashing like fluctuations. Jade Archive Xiaohua smiled and said, I formed the nascent soul in my lower dantian, and attracted the spiritual energy of heaven and earth. The double spirit sky should be able to sense it. However, the soul cultivator Xiaohua said, that day in the void, there were only fluctuations. It was more like the fluctuations attracted the star power, which was why the heaven and earth spirit energy was produced in Star Splendor Heaven, right? Left and right are the spiritual energy of heaven and earth. One of you is called the first stage of the spirit heaven, and the other is called the Star Splendor Heaven. Don't you think it's boring? However, I feel that this place is different from the other heavens. Little White was disdainful of the disagreement between the two and grinned. The bottom of this place is extremely narrow, almost inaudible, and the top is extremely wide, like a tree root deeply rooted in the ground. How can you still call it heaven? Hearing this, Jade Archive Xiaohua thought about the Bodhi tree next to the exquisite temple. Wasn't it made up of many branches twisted together? And how many roots had penetrated into the foothills? Thinking of this, Jade Archive Xiaohua suddenly had a flash of inspiration and said with a smile, If that's the case, why don't we call it spiritual root? No, it's too vulgar. It doesn't sound as good as Star Splendor Heaven. Soul Cultivator Xiaohua immediately objected. Besides, the spiritual energy of heaven and earth here is much more than spiritual light. If you want to call it spiritual root, you have to call it spiritual root. Io, hearing Soul Cultivator Xiaohua mention the spiritual energy of heaven and earth, Jade Archive Xiaohua suddenly became happy again. He clapped his hands and said, "What fellow Taoist said is right. Just as I advanced to the nascent soul stage, there was spiritual energy of heaven and earth here. In other words, I can rely on whether or not this place can sense the spiritual energy of heaven and earth, and then judge whether or not others can sense the spiritual energy of heaven and earth, and then judge whether or not they can cultivate my Tao sex cultivation method. Fellow Taoist, if this place isn't called spiritual root, then what is it called? Forget it, do as you wish." Soul Cultivator Xiaohua couldn't stand Jade Archive Xiaohua said, "You have the final say. If you call it spiritual root, then it is spiritual root. If you call it spiritual aura heaven, then it is spiritual aura heaven. If you say you can judge whether or not a cultivator can cultivate, then you can judge whether or not others can cultivate. It has nothing to do with I. Don't." Jade Archive Xiaohua pulled Soul Cultivator Xiaohua and said, "How does it have nothing to do with you? I am Xiaohua, and you are also Xiaohua. With me, Xiaohua, in this world, who dares to bully and humiliate the Tao sect. You also have a part of the responsibility here. How about this? You carefully think about whether or not you can find a cultivation method to judge whether or not a mortal's spiritual root can sense the spiritual aura of heaven and earth. How about it?" Here Soul Cultivator Xiaohua was about to refuse, but looking at Jade Archive Xiaohua's smile that wasn't a smile, he said very dejectedly, "Alright, since I's soul bridge and that green seal text called Cleansing Heaven and Washing Earth have already been practiced, I will help you take a look." "Many thanks, fellow Taoist." Xiaohua bowed and said, "When I's nascent soul is formed, I will ask fellow Taoist to go out for a walk." This is what fellow Taoist said. "I want to be the first to go out and take a look." Soul Cultivator Xiaohua unexpectedly laughed like a little fox. Jade Archive Xiaohua suddenly had a feeling that he had fallen into a trap. Humph. Jade Archive Xiaohua pretended to snort coldly. How effective is that green seal text of Cleansing Heaven and Washing Earth? I will let fellow Taoist know. Soul Cultivator Xiaohua said with a smile. This green seal text is like lightning, thunder, clouds, and rain. It is precisely used to break all the talismans of soul cultivators in the world. If you practice it to a profound level, any kind of imprisonment, any kind of seal can be broken. Good. Jade Archive Xiaohua's face had a slight smile, and he said again, "Actually, the discovery of spiritual roots doesn't mean anything to you and me, but it has a great impact on the development of the world's Tao. Now that the spiritual aura of heaven and earth has changed greatly in the Donrain continent, all the Tao of disciple selection is ineffective. If we can rely on this spiritual root to select a disciple, you and I will have done a great deed." "Yes, I understand." Soul Cultivator Xiaohua seemed to have sensed Jade Archive Xiaohua's displeasure, and he hurriedly said with a smile, "Right now, we are only at the spiritual root, so what do the tree trunks, branches, and leaves look like?" While Jade Archive Xiaohua and Soul Cultivator Xiaohua were talking, Little White was not interested. It just raised its head to look at the starry sky, looking at the two spirit characters, and muttered to itself, "I really want to fly up and take a look." "Little White," Jade Archive Xiaohua said with a smile, "since the spirit character is an incomplete green seal text, it must be hidden in a dangerous place. Right now, our cultivation is limited, and it is not enough to get close to the green seal text. In the future, when our cultivation deepens, we will definitely be able to go and take a look one day." Alas, unexpectedly, Jade Archive Xiaohua's comforting words did not make Little White smile, but instead made it sigh. "I actually envy you humans. Just the soul alone contains such a great mystery. I really don't know how you humans obtain the favor of heaven and earth. And my soul doesn't seem to have such a mystery." Little White's sigh naturally made Jade Archive Xiaohua think of the debate he had with Ao Shui and old monster Jifeng about who is the wisest of all living things. Whether it is a human, a demon, or even a spiritual flower or spiritual grass, they are all the heavenly bell. They all have their own value of existence, and each has its own strengths and weaknesses. Everyone is a spiritual object of heaven and earth, so why should we care about who is the wisest of all living things? Jade Archive Xiaohua could only put it this way. Little White was not like old monster Jifeng, so Xiaohua could only compromise. Unexpectedly, Little White shook its head slightly and whispered, "Xiaohua, you are still wrong." "I am wrong?" Jade Archive Xiaohua stared blankly, somewhat unable to understand Little White's words. "Where did I go wrong?" Little White shook its head again and said, "I only envy the souls of the human race. Envy that the human race has the heavenly bell. But this kind of envy is only envy, and it is limited to the soul. Compared to my demon race, the difference between the human race and my demon race is not just a little bit. To be honest, in my eyes, the human race can only rely on their spirituality to compete with my demon race. Everything else is useless." Sweat. Jade Archive Xiaohua did not expect Little White to be as arrogant as old monster Jifeng and Ao Shui. Its tone just now was just jealousy, not envy. He could not help but smile bitterly. "My human race, are you still a human?" Little White did not wait for Jade Archive Xiaohua to finish speaking, and asked with a smile. Jade Archive Xiaohua smiled even more bitterly. Last time when they surrounded the fire dragon's soul essence, Little White already knew too many of his secrets. If he really forced himself to say it, he really could not be considered a complete human. Actually, the most terrifying thing about the human race is their ability to reproduce. Little White looked at Jade Archive Xiaohua, knowing that he had nothing to say, and continued. "In my memory, when I first arrived at Yellow Flower Ridge, there were not many people nearby, but what happened later? Although the population of Yellow Flower Ridge had withered, how many people from the secular world would appear within a 1,000-li radius? In my demon race. Ouch, I seem to remember something." At this point, Little White's face changed slightly, and suddenly turned into a huge dragon rolling in the spiritual route, no longer paying attention to Jade Archive Xiaohua. "Fellow Taoist, there seems to be an old monk peeping at your bath outside." Soul Cultivator Xiaohua reminded with a smile. "You'd better go out quickly, don't let your spring scenery be exposed." Alas, Jade Archive Xiaohua ignored Soul Cultivator Xiaohua's laughter and sighed. "You should know the cause of this matter. This old monk wants I to shave my head and become a monk. Although his tantra does not prohibit meat and fish and marriage, I am still a Taoist disciple. How can I become a monk at will? Future Buddha. Just listen to it, it's very arrogant." Soul Cultivator Xiaohua instigated. "Why don't we play with future Buddha's orthodoxy? Fellow Taoist, you now have so many fellow Taoists." Ouch, that's right. The Jade Archive Xiaohua understood that Soul Cultivator Xiaohua's thoughts were exactly what he was thinking. However, because he was thinking too much, he didn't think of these details. This poor Taoist doesn't need to shave his head, but the Buddha's Sarira can shave it. That guy originally practiced Buddhism. He should be willing to shave his head, right? Farewell, fellow Taoist. Jade Archive Xiaohua cupped his hands and retreated from the mysterious dark clouds. In front of him was the steaming hot spring in the snow. Xiaohua was hesitating whether to escape or not, but he found the mystery of the spiritual route in the mysterious dark clouds, which delayed him. Now that the old monk of exquisite temple chased after him, how could he still have the face to escape? However, with the Buddha's Sarira as a scapegoat, Xiaohua did not mind becoming a monk once. Chapter 3400. Looking at the old monk who was holding a strange yellow monk robe, Xiaohua couldn't help but sigh. Just now, he had been talking nonsense with Little White about the spirits of all living things. In fact, as a human, the most difficult thing for a demon to reach was the human heart. Only with a heart could one be benevolent, righteous, and virtuous. Only then could one have no regrets for one's faith. This kind of human nature was something that demons would never understand. From the exquisite temple to this pool, Xiaohua only needed to fly. However, Xiaohua also knew that along the way, not to mention the slippery snow and rugged mountain roads. Even with the old monk's turbid eyes, it was already extremely difficult for him to reach this pool from the exquisite temple. Not to mention, the old monk's clothes were already covered in snow. Xiaohua didn't know how long he had been standing here. However, the old monk's arms were very calm as he held the robe. The yellow hat was placed on top of the robe, and a string of prayer beads was placed beside the hat. His eyes were calmly looking forward. They had already passed through the water vapor and landed outside the cliff. From those turbid eyes, Xiaohua could see the old monk's conviction and persistence. Although Xiaohua didn't say anything, he believed that Xiaohua was bathing in the pool. Facing such a heavy trust, Xiaohua felt a rare kind of nervousness. It was as if this was a kind of responsibility. This responsibility made Xiaohua feel even more restrained and uneasy than when he faced the strange insect in the void. "Elder, please wait a moment. I will come up right away." Xiaohua muttered to himself for a moment. He used his hand to lift up the hot water in the pool and symbolically washed his body a few times. "Buddhist Lord, don't be anxious." A smile flashed across the old monk's extremely old face. He said, "Carefully bathing and washing away the dust in the body is also cleansing the mind. Using a pure mind is the foundation of Buddhism." Buddhist Lord spent so much effort and didn't slack off in the slightest. This is truly worthy of this poor monk's admiration. A trace of shame appeared in Xiaohua's heart. He originally wanted to get up, but now he could only be patient and properly wash his body. Although he didn't wash away any dirt, Xiaohua felt that it was a blasphemy to the old monk's lofty faith. Looking at the monk robe in the old monk's hand, Xiaohua waved his hand, and the yellow monk robe flew into the air. After casually putting it on, it landed beside the old monk. "This poor monk will help Buddha Lord change his clothes." The old monk felt the clothes in his hands fly away. After a while he finally opened his mouth. Xiaohua wanted to put on his own clothes, but this monk robe was different from a Taoist robe. It was even different from the monk robes Xiaohua had seen before. It was very strange, so he didn't put on any pretense. He smiled and said, "Thank you, elder." When the old monk heard this, he beamed with joy. He looked at Xiaohua with his eyes closed, and his hands trembled as he helped Xiaohua put on his clothes. After half a meal's worth of time, Xiaohua finally put on the monk's robe. When one of his arms came out of the monk's robe, Xiaohua let out a long sigh of relief. He looked at the old monk who had also changed into a new monk's robe and asked, "Elder, you don't have to wear this monk's robe every day, right?" "Buddha Lord, don't worry. This is the Buddha Lord's formal robe. It can only be worn during my tantric sect's major celebrations. There's no need to wear it on ordinary days." The old monk smiled and said, "Moreover, my Shaolin Long Temple's lineage has always been small. When this poor monk passes away, there will only be one Buddha Lord. The Buddha Lord's status is honorable. Other than the current Buddha Lord, who else can stand shoulder to shoulder with the Buddha Lord in the past? If the Buddha Lord wants to wear it, he can wear it. No one can stop him." "Hee, that's really free and unfettered." Xiaohua smiled. The old monk proudly said, "Of course, my tantric sect has always been an anomaly in the Buddhist sect. In the eyes of others, it is full of mystery." "I understand." Xiaohua smiled. It was funny but also a bit bitter. Just now, when the old monk was changing his clothes, he used his spiritual sense and true qi to check the old monk's meridians and body. He even used the Devil Realms technique to check his blood vessels. Just as the old monk said, the old monk was really at the end of his life. His meridians had long withered. The essence of his body was also dried up. His heart and blood vessels were abnormally old. Everything he did now was based on a kind of belief. The scene of the old monk lying on the ground was definitely not a coincidence. Facing such a body, even Xiaohua's rejuvenation pill was powerless to bring him back to life. Alas, there is a limit to one's strength. It is indeed so. Perhaps only an immortal or a true Buddha Lord can let this old man live until tomorrow. Xiaohua sighed. "Buddha Lord, please. This poor monk can finally shave the Buddha Lord's head." The old monk put his palms together and bowed in a very gratified manner. This is the most glorious moment of this poor monk's life. It is also the moment this poor monk has looked forward to for a lifetime. "Thank you for your trouble, elder." Xiaohua used his monk robe to wrap the old monk. The two of them slowly flew up and flew towards Shaolinglong Temple. Although Xiaohua was afraid that the old monk would not be able to take it and flew extremely slowly, he still landed in front of Shaolinglong Temple's main hall in a moment. Although the old monk could not see clearly, when his feet touched the ground, he felt the familiarity of the surroundings. He was not surprised and said with a smile, "Although Buddha Lord has not shaved his head, he actually has such divine ability. It is truly the fortune of my Tantric Buddhism sect. I do not dare. They are all insignificant Daos. Compared to elders' cultivation, they are far inferior." Xiaohua did not dare to be too arrogant in front of an old man like Dao Shan. He replied humbly, "This poor monk's cultivation has just begun. It cannot be compared to Buddha Lord who has already cultivated for several lifetimes. Even if Buddha Lord is a senior cultivator in this life and does not understand Buddhism, as long as he enters my Buddhism sect, he will be able to find the good karma and good karma of that day. All Buddhism sect's cultivation can be traced." The old monk's seemingly careless words immediately made Xiaohua feel greatly alarmed in his heart. That's right. Buddhism sect emphasizes reincarnation and cultivation. This hidden immortal continent. This Xiao feels so familiar. Although I have not found Luzhen yet, I have not found Piaomiao sect, but perhaps it is this Zhao's experience from my previous life. Xiaohua's thoughts turned rapidly. Could it be that this Xiao is really, alas, there is always only one truth in this world. Although Xiaohua is already a nascent soul master, he is still so insignificant under the heavenly Tao. He wants to find his own origin from the confusing world of the human world. All kinds of traces, 1,000 layers of fog, always make him unable to find the way back on the wrong path. I know. The old monk raised his hand and pushed open the door of the main hall. He did not ask about Xiaohua's cultivation. He did not even care if Xiaohua was a Confucian cultivator or a Taoist cultivator. Perhaps he already regarded Xiaohua as a lay disciple of Buddhism sect. "Buddha Lord, please." The old monk pushed open the door. He did not dare to take half a step forward and said very respectfully. Xiaohua was also not polite and stepped into the main hall. However, he was also somewhat nervous in his heart. He did not know what was inside this main hall. Xiaohua naturally did not enter the main hall of Buddhism sect. However, he saw many Buddhist shrines and Buddha statues in the ruins of Buddhism sect. Even in his memory, there was once a golden statue of Buddha. However, this Shaolinglong Temple was a branch of Tantric Buddhism. Moreover, it was built 10,000 years ago to wait for him, the so-called future Buddha Lord. How could Xiaohua not be curious? The whole main hall was empty, but it was also abnormally clean. Xiaohua raised his eyes and saw a 10-feet golden body. This golden body was abnormally fat, with a bare chest and a very warm smile on its face. What was special was that on both sides of its belly, which was bigger than 10 months of pregnancy, in its left hand was a small bag, and in its right hand was a thick prayer bead. Moreover, this golden body was casually lying there. It was not standing like an ordinary golden body of Buddha Lord. It was also not like when Xiaohua first formed Buddha's sarira with one hand pointing to the sky, and the other pointing to the earth. This is the future Buddha Lord. Xiaohua saw that the golden body of Buddha inside was not too different from what he had imagined. It was the same as what he had seen in the ruins of Buddhism sect. Unconsciously, his heart was slightly calmed, a kind of inexplicable calmness. In front of the golden body of Buddha, there was only an ordinary incense table. On it, 2 thick red candles were lit. In the middle of the red candles, there was a small fist-sized incense burner. On the incense burner, there were 9 red incense sticks, each as thick as a thumb. The incense burner was not big, so the 9 incense sticks had already completely filled the incense burner. At this time, it should be because the old monk had waited for Xiaohua for too long. The incense sticks had almost burned to the end. In front of the incense table, there were 2 ordinary praying mats. Although they were somewhat old, one of them was particularly worn out. Before the praying mat, there was no Buddhist weapon such as a wooden fish. There was only a small box, half of which was covered by a bright yellow silk. When Xiaohua stopped to look, the old monk had already shakily walked to the praying mat. He knelt on the praying mat, kowtowed and recited, Namo Methriya Buddha, disciple kowtows to Buddha. Disciple has waited under the green lamp for nearly 100 years. Now, I finally welcome Buddha Lord's flesh in this life. Disciple is fortunate to be able to shave Buddha Lord's flesh today. May Buddha Lord send down the auspiciousness of 100,000 worlds to bless Buddha Lord's flesh. Disciple is willing to use my broken body to help Buddha Lord cross the tribulation in this life. Immediately, the old monk respectfully kowtowed 9 times with his head on the ground. His mouth was also chanting, and at this time, Xiaohua was once again bewildered. After a full half cup of tea's time, the 9 incense sticks finally burned to the end. The old monk raised his head, put his palms together and said, Namo Methriya Buddha. Then he lifted his hand and lifted the silk covering the small box. When he opened the box, there was a bronze mirror and a simple razor inside. The old monk invited the razor out with both hands. He turned around and coughed. Bodhi, I am holding the blade for Buddha Lord today. Are you willing to abandon everything in the secular world and enter my Buddhist sect? Elder. Xiaohua walked to the front. He didn't want to hide anything and said, although I cultivate Buddhist sect's exquisite leaf sutra, I was already a Tao sect disciple before practicing Buddhist sect's cultivation method. Moreover, my cultivation method is very complicated. If I say it, Elder may not believe me. Today, I came from hidden immortal continent, but I want to find a senior monk who knows the method of nirvana. I really came to Shaolin Long Temple to ask for directions. I didn't expect there to be so many surprises waiting for me here. Elder, let me shave my head and respect me as the future Buddha Lord. I can accept it. But this shave matter, just now when I was bathing, I already thought it through. I have already cultivated Buddha's Sarira. Elder, can you let this Buddha's Sarira replace me to shave my head and become a monk? Chapter 3401. Exquisite Leaf Scripture? When the old monk heard this, he couldn't help but be startled. The razor in his hand trembled even more. A series of words came out of his mouth that Xiaohua didn't understand. The same tone as when he was praying. Xiaohua smiled bitterly. Elder, I came from the hidden immortal continent, so I don't understand the language of the Pure Land world. Elder, if you have anything to say, please speak slowly. Namo Methriya Buddha. The old monk let out a long breath and respectfully asked. This poor monk is really overjoyed. I lost my calm for a moment, and let Buddha Lord laugh at me. Although my exquisite leaf temple is waiting for the arrival of the Buddha Lord, and at the same time, we also prepared all the Buddhist scriptures and Buddhist secret techniques for the Buddha Lord, and even offered sariras as offerings, but the exquisite leaf scripture that the Buddha Lord cultivates is not included. The name of this Buddhist scripture is not even recorded in the Buddhist scriptures of the Pure Land world. It is only passed down by word of mouth in my exquisite leaf temple. The Buddha Lord has 9 lifetimes of fate to be able to practice this Buddhist scripture, so naturally, he is indeed the Buddha Lord that my exquisite leaf temple is waiting for. The old monk paused for a moment, and took a deep breath as if he was calming himself down. Then he said, Buddha Lord, you have such an opportunity to cultivate Buddha's Sarira before shaving your head. But how can a Sarira shave your head? What? Buddha Sariras? Until now, the old monk was shocked as if he had just woken up from a dream. His shriveled lips trembled violently, and he could no longer hold the razor in his hand. He loosened his grip, and the razor fell to the ground. Xiaohua raised his hand, and the razor floated up, flying back to the old monk's hand. Then, a string of words that Xiaohua couldn't understand came out of the old monk's mouth. While speaking, the old monk knelt on the praying mat and kowtowed several times. Looking at the old monk's ecstatic appearance, Xiaohua's heart was both proud and happy. He was willing to bring hope to the old man, no matter how big or small. Seeing that the incense on the incense table was about to go out, Xiaohua hurriedly reminded, Elder, the 9 incense sticks in front of the Buddha are about to go out, it's fine. The old monk said in a relaxed manner, I was worried before the hot spring. I was even prepared to shave Lord Buddha's head before the candles went out. But now I have to shave Buddha's Sarira. Such earthly incense is no longer worthy. Let it burn out slowly. This is all Buddha's arrangement. As if he was afraid that Xiaohua didn't understand, the old monk explained, the razors of the secular world, the incense sticks of the secular world, they are all used to shave the body of a mortal. To shave the body of a true Buddha's sarira, that is something that only the eminent monks who have saved the Buddha's fruit, and even our Buddha has the qualifications to do. The incense sticks are definitely the colored glaze fragrant oil of our Buddha's thunderclap temple. And the razors are also the severing mundane silk of our Buddha's thunderclap temple. Alas, this is all recorded in the Buddhist sect's ancient books. How many people are able to cultivate Buddha's sarira? Since he had cultivated the Buddha's sarira, how could he not have shaved his head? Compared to shaving one's body, shaving one's head for a Buddha's sarira surpasses how much? Lord Buddha has already abandoned his body before entering our Buddhist sect. This is truly worthy of celebration. Hearing this, Xiaohua really didn't know whether to laugh or cry. He was just being lazy and avoiding it, but it actually coincided with some of the Buddhist sect's secrets. He rubbed his nose. He really wanted to tell the old monk that whether it was shaving one's head with a Buddha's sarira or shaving one's body, they were both just shaving. Buddhism equalized all living things, so Buddha's sarira and the body should also be equal. Unfortunately, Xiaohua couldn't say this to the old monk who was a bit flustered. He could only wait until the old monk calmed down a bit. Or perhaps he wouldn't have the chance to say this to the old monk in this lifetime. This time it took longer than last time. Only then did the old monk's words become orderly. Lord Buddha, if that's the case, Lord Buddha's shave should actually be done in the Thunderclap Temple and personally presided over by the current Lord Buddha. Disciples' cultivation is shallow. If I were to shave Lord Buddha's head, I'm afraid I would provoke Lord Buddha's displeasure and affect Lord Buddha's cultivation. No matter, Xiaohua said with a smile. I know the Thunderclap Temple, but the Thunderclap Temple doesn't know me. I want to go find Lord Buddha, but Lord Buddha doesn't want to find me. If I can't shave my head because of this and affect my cultivation, Elder, wouldn't Lord Buddha punish you even more? Hee, Lord Buddha's words are reasonable. The old monk faintly smiled. My tantric sect, and the future Lord Buddha and the Thunderclap Temple are all Buddhist sect branches, but after all, forget it, disciple won't say anymore. Disciple is now bold enough to shave Lord Buddha's head. Disciple naturally received good karma because of this. It's extremely beneficial to disciple's cultivation in the next life. Disciple thanks Lord Buddha for the gift. After saying that, the old monk respectfully bowed to Xiaohua again. Xiaohua smiled and raised his hand to help the old monk up, saying, Elder has been cultivating bitterly here for 100 years. Now is the time for this seat to repay you. This is what Elder should have received. If possible, this seat is willing to bring this honor to all the branches of Xiaolinglong Temple. Disciple represents my Xiaolinglong Temple to thank Lord Buddha for the gift. The old monk was overjoyed, trembling with joy. Originally, Disciple wanted to tell Lord Buddha clearly after Lord Buddha's head shave. Now that Lord Buddha has already refined Buddha's sarira, Lord Buddha only needs to use the sarira in the Buddha's head hall of my Xiaolinglong Temple. That will be the glory of my Xiaolinglong Temple. What? Xiaohua was shocked, almost inconceivably saying, Refining your sarira is a gift to you? Is this the glory you've been waiting for? That's right. It's exactly so. Lord Buddha only needs to integrate these sarira into Lord Buddha's sarira. That will be the greatest gift to us. The old monk was very sure. After disciple shave Lord Buddha's head, disciple will go to the west. Lord Buddha, please cremate disciple's remains and use the sarira inside. Disciple can wait for Lord Buddha in this life, help Lord Buddha shave Lord Buddha's head, and then integrate the sarira with Lord Buddha's sarira. Lord Buddha's light will be able to refine disciple's karma. Disciple will definitely be able to achieve Buddha's fruit with a karmic and unobstructed heart after reincarnation. So that's how it is. Xiaohua somewhat understood, but he still hesitated. This seat has never read Buddhist scriptures. Previously, I have also seen the cultivation method of the great strength Vajradharma body. It is a selfish act of swallowing other people's sarira to strengthen oneself. Could it be that this seat's Buddha's sarira is different from this cruel cultivation method? Naturally, there is an essential difference. The old monk smiled and explained. Lord Buddha only needs to look at the Buddhist scriptures at the side of the main hall to know the specifics. The great strength Vajra Dharma body is to cultivate the position of our Buddhist protector. It only borrows the power of the Sarira, and does not eliminate the karma of the Sarira. Disciple doesn't know how much Lord Buddha knows about our Buddhist sect's Buddha fruits. Jialan Venerable, Heavenly King Vajra, Arhat, Bodhisattva, and Buddha, these 7 kinds of Buddha fruits, except for Bodhisattva and Buddha, which can eliminate the Sarira karma, and use the supreme power of Buddha's light to help people cultivate in the next life. The other 5 kinds of Buddha fruits can only borrow power like the great strength Vajra Dharma fruit. Not necessarily. Xiao Hua's suspicion immediately arose again. He couldn't help but secretly criticize. Sarira can help the cultivation of the golden body. This is known by all Buddhist experts. How many senior monks can cultivate Bodhisattva and Buddha? How many people can know the effect of this Sarira? Eliminating the Sarira karma, and helping people cultivate in the next life. It may not be their words to scare people. However, seeing that this old monk was so pious, Xiao Hua didn't dare to say these words, especially to provoke him. Of course, Xiao Hua was only suspicious. He didn't study Buddhism and didn't have the secret technique to eliminate the Sarira karma. The Buddhist sect is a cultivation path that is on par with the Taoist sect. Who can say that they don't have this kind of magical power to help people cultivate in the next life? While speaking, the old monk's figure swayed twice, as if he couldn't stand steadily. Elder Xiao Hua hurriedly supported the old monk and called out. Disciple doesn't have much time left in the mortal world. Lord Buddha, please take pity on disciple, and let disciple have the honor of shaving Lord Buddha's Sarira into my tantra. The old monk hurriedly waved his hand, somewhat out of breath. Good. Seeing this, Xiao Hua knew that this was already the old monk's last wish. He also didn't dare to be negligent. He patted his forehead, and the Sarira came out of his Naiwan palace. When the 4-chi-long golden body held the clear water bottle and dressed in the 10,000 Buddha painting stepped into the air. Amitba Buddha good, he chanted the name of Buddha, his face solemn and benevolent. Rumble the heaven and earth shook, and the wind and clouds changed color. Where the wind and clouds swayed, a fierce wind rose. Wherever the fierce wind passed, the snow that filled the sky was blown into the sky, and the layers of dark clouds in the sky were cut down layer by layer in this fierce wind. The wind grew stronger and stronger, and it was as if there were small holes in the air for thousands of miles around. The seemingly endless power of faith poured out from these small holes, like a waterfall falling from the sky. Tens of thousands of streams surged, and fell toward the inconspicuous little Linglong temple of the great snow mountain. This is the old monk was shocked again, because as the power of faith fell from the sky, heavenly flowers covered the entire snowy mountain. Fairies wearing flawless heavenly clothes sat cross-legged on the exquisite temple, either playing the pipa or softly singing. The sound of nature filled the entire main hall. One after another, powerful sky dragons roared and swam around the mini exquisite temple. The effect of Nanwu Guanxian Bodhisattva in the longevity town was too shocking. Under the influence of the Buddhist sect's disciples, the worship of Guanxian spread uncontrollably throughout the entire hidden immortal continent. This pure power of faith should have slowly poured into Xiao Hua's Buddha relic, but because of the innate divine restriction, this power of faith was not collected by Xiao Hua in time, and had already condensed to a very terrifying degree. Now that the Buddha relic suddenly appeared in the Pure Land world, the power of faith naturally gathered together, and its momentum was naturally extraordinary, causing even more strange phenomena. Previously, when Xiao Hua took out the Buddha relic in the Black Cloud Ridge, the situation appeared like this. But fortunately, this was the Pure Land world, the Buddhist sect's mainland. Wherever the Buddha's light shone, there were many people who achieved the Buddha fruit, and this power of faith was indeed very eye-catching. The monks either knelt down to express their thanks, or rang the bell to celebrate, and no one came to disturb them. Chapter 3402. Wu. Similar to the spirit tide, the power of faith gathered to a certain extent, and immediately turned into threads of crystal-like objects. These threads of crystal-like light flashed and fell into Xiao Hua's Buddha Sarira. Every time a thread of crystal-like light flashed, the Buddha Sarira would slightly tremble. Moreover, as the crystal-like threads fell, the Buddha Sarira's body flickered with golden light, and actually broke through the 4 feet restriction. It gradually increased in height until it reached 5 feet before stopping. The strange thing was that as the Buddha Sarira increased in height, the figures of the dancing fairies and roaring dragons from before actually gradually became blurry. When the Buddha's golden body reached 5 feet, it actually disappeared. Only the heavenly flowers were still fluttering around the snowy mountain. At this time, the strange phenomenon within the 10 million li radius had already converged to 100 li radius. The dark clouds and snowflakes in the sky had all disappeared, revealing a bright sun. Perhaps because the snowy mountain was high enough, or perhaps because the sky here was pure enough, the sun was very dazzling. Under the sun, the pure crystal-like threads of crystal-like silver light swayed and fell like swimming fish. Wherever the crystal-like threads passed, gusts of wind were also produced. The sound of the wind never stopped, as if the world was singing. This disciple is very lucky. The old monk's eyes seemed to also brighten. He trembled as he walked in front of the Buddha Sarira and bowed to the sky. This disciple really didn't expect Buddha Lord's Buddha Sarira to already have a 5 feet golden body. Buddha Lord's enlightenment in this life will definitely come true. To be able to shave Buddha Lord's head and lead Buddha Lord into our Buddhist sect, this disciple is truly fortunate. Amitabha, the Buddha Sarira chanted. Although its appearance was exactly the same as Xiaohua's, the benevolence and compassion on its face was not something Xiaohua could have. The golden body of the Buddha Sarira descended and stood right in front of the old monk. The old monk extended his trembling right hand and landed on the top of the Buddha Sarira's head. He chanted, "People say that there are 3,000 worries. All of them are born from the heart and from the head. Cut off worries and let go of worries. Entering our Buddhist sect is joy. The body is an external object. Only the body can enter the mortal world. The mortal world is like the sea. The body is the boat. The Buddha's heart is the helm. Kindness is the shore. Cut off your worries and enter the sea of bitterness." Amitabha, as the old monk chanted, his hand landed on the top of the Buddha Sarira's head. Boom! With a loud sound, the Buddha Sarira's golden light brightened the old monk's turbid eyes. He seemed to see the golden body of the Buddha Sarira. At the moment when the old monk's hand was about to leave the Sarira's head, his middle finger slightly trembled as if it twitched, wanting to touch the top of the golden body again. Amitabha, Amitabha! Suddenly, the sound of Buddha chants resounded throughout the entire main hall of the little exquisite temple. The old monk's hand gently moved away from the top of the Buddha Sarira's head. He turned his head with difficulty and saw that behind the incense table, the golden body of the Maitreya Buddha was also shining brightly. The sound of chanting was coming from within the golden body. This golden light was like a sword and the chanting was like a bell. When it landed on the main hall, waves of blood-curdling screams rose one after another. At the same time, strands of black shadows also emerged from the left side. Within the shadows, the intertwining of the fairies and rakshasas were all destroyed by the golden light and the chanting. The old monk covered his chest with one hand. A black shadow also flew out from his body, turning into a black fog and disappearing in midair. The old monk's body fell to the ground of the main hall again, motionless. Amitabha Xiaohua was shocked at first, but then he had some understanding. He had experienced Namo Guanyin Bodhisattva's enlightenment in the Longevity Town. He knew that the old monk was naturally still the old monk, but when he revealed the golden body of the Buddha Sarira, he had already attracted the heavenly demon. The old monk originally did not have any cultivation, so he was afraid that the heavenly demon had taken advantage of him in an instant. Just now, the heavenly demon probably wanted to have evil thoughts about him, but just happened to encounter the golden body of the Maitreya Buddha that was enshrined in the little exquisite temple, so it was defeated. Xiaohua had some understanding, but Xiaohua did not know. The Buddhism sect was not like the Taoist sect, and the old monk was not like Dao Shan. The Buddhism sect did not need to refine any Buddhism sect's cultivation method. As long as one chanted the Buddhist scriptures every day, even if one did not have the strength to truss a chicken in front of the heavenly demon, they would be comparable to a warrior wearing full armor. It was impossible for them to be used by ordinary heavenly demons. Although the old monk had one foot in the grave, his life of faith was steadfast, waiting for the Buddha Lord to come. To the heavenly demon he was simply invulnerable. However, why was the heavenly demon able to take advantage of the old monk's weakness at the last moment of his life? This was not something that Xiaohua could understand at this time. And what made Xiaohua even more surprised was that when the old monk fell to the ground, a black shadow with a wisp of arrogant laughter flew out from the old monk's body. Finally, a voice with a hint of unwillingness and anger flew out from the old monk's body. Namo Guanyin Bodhisattva's golden body. There is actually the cause of Namo Maitreya Buddha? This is really beyond my expectations. Damn it, this is all the old bald donkey's scheme. Today, I fell into your trap, so consider yourself Buddha is 1 foot higher. Maitreya Buddha, I will return. At that time, I will let you know what it means to be 10 feet higher than the devil. His Xiaohua's corporeal body naturally didn't see this scene. His golden body, which was already 5 feet tall but was almost completely empty inside, had long seen this scene clearly. The primordial spirit inside the Buddha's relic instantly understood, and almost sucked in a breath of cold air. Buddha and devil are indeed everywhere. If there's good, there's evil. If there's light, there's darkness. This heavenly devil is so formless that it actually sneaked into my corporeal body before I achieved enlightenment. It even subtly eroded my physical body under its influence. I understand now. That day in front of Zhai Xinglu, if the original body's temperament was like before, it may not have had a further conflict with Duan Muqiu. In Seven Yang Temple, it may not have been so ruthless to the mortal world's constables. Even in Black Wind Ridge, it may not have killed the Bat King and the Bronze Pillar country's pursuers. All these subtle changes are all because of this heavenly demon? While the Buddha relic primordial spirit was pondering, the golden body of the Buddha above the exquisite temple shone even brighter, and the chanting became even louder. It was as if a golden sun was reflecting the white sun above their heads. The golden light rushed into the sun, and the remaining crystal threads and thousands of wild gales were attracted by the golden light. They rapidly descended, and together with the golden light, they all fell into the Buddha relic. Jia. The Buddha's Sarira shouted a mantra. A golden Jia word flew out from the Buddha's mouth and rushed into the air. It turned into a tiny golden thread and disappeared. Xiaohua's Buddha's Sarira slightly opened its eyes. It could already see clearly that the golden thread went to the place where the power of faith came from. This Jia word was just like what the old monk said before. It was the Buddha's Sarira borrowing its own power of Buddhism, using the future Buddha Lord's merit to repay the faith of the masses and redeem the Buddha in the sea of suffering. Good, Xiaohua sighed with emotion. The mysteries of Buddhism are indeed extraordinary. I was a bit stingy before. Just as the golden body of the Buddha's light dissipated, an item that looked like a fallen leaf flew out from the Buddha's Sarira and floated in front of Xiaohua's Buddha's Sarira. Good, the Buddha's Sarira raised its hand and that item landed in its hand. It was a golden leaf. Needless to say, it should be one of the last 3 leaves of the exquisite Palette Sutra. Seeing this, Xiaohua was really overjoyed. Ever since he obtained the exquisite Palette Sutra in the Imperial Thunder Sect, he had always wanted to make up for the leaves on the exquisite pagoda. Unfortunately, even in the ruins of Buddhism, the Buddha's light of the Maitreya Buddha's golden body could not make up for all the leaves. Since then, Xiaohua had a premonition in his heart that in the Xiaoyu continent where Buddhism was destroyed, he was afraid that it would be impossible for him to make up for the exquisite Palette Sutra. Later on, Xiaohua accidentally arrived at the hidden immortal continent. Xiaohua's long-cherished wish once again had a chance to be realized. Of course, the hidden immortal continent was still extremely far away from the Western Paradise. Xiaohua also did not have extravagant hopes that he would be able to obtain these last 3 leaves in a short period of time. Moreover, Xiaohua's cultivation in Buddhism had been steadily increasing. Even in the Buddha's Sarira, there were still mysteries that he himself did not know and could not comprehend. Therefore, he was not particularly anxious. He just wanted to go to the Western Paradise when the miscellaneous matters in the hidden immortal continent were settled. First, he would deal with the matter of Jiang Luer's death, and then slowly look for clues about the leaves. Now through the vein of space, Xiaohua not only came to the Western Paradise, but also encountered the exquisite temple. This exquisite temple was waiting for his arrival. The leaves hidden in the golden body of the future Buddha of the exquisite temple were prepared for him. Wasn't this the legendary wearing out iron shoes in a fruitless search, only to find it without any effort? At this time, Xiaohua no longer doubted his identity as the future Buddha. The Buddha's Sarira took the golden leaves and looked up at the clear sky outside the main hall. The sky was exceptionally blue. Looking from the main hall of the exquisite temple, it was particularly close. The Buddha's Sarira unconsciously sighed. Umitba, every drink and every peck is predestined in the previous life. One cause and one effect, waiting for 10,000 years. With the help of the Buddhas, I will bear this kind of karma. I will use my karmic fire to refine the karma of the Buddhas, and help the Buddhas achieve fruition. Before he could finish speaking, a myriad of Sanskrit chants resounded once again. The sound of copper bells also resounded, and they were struck a total of 81 times before they stopped. Come out! The Buddha Sarira waved its hand, and the Linglong Pagoda flew out from Xiaohua's Naiwan Palace. The golden light flashed and landed on the main hall. That piece of leaf turned into a golden lotus and fell into the pagoda. Kacha! There was a light and crisp sound. It was the Linglong Pagoda fusing into one. Come in! The Buddha's Sarira pointed his finger again, and the exquisite pagoda's Buddha's light shone on one side of the main hall. The thick wall immediately turned into nothingness, and all the Buddhist scriptures and golden leaves fell into the exquisite pagoda along with the Buddha's light. After collecting everything in the exquisite temple's sutra pavilion, the Buddha's Sarira looked to the other side, and that was the pagoda where the Sarira was placed. Now the Buddha's Sarira had already built a 5-foot golden body, but the golden body was not full, and the lotus platform under his feet was still the 4th rank. The Sarira in the pagoda was indeed useful. However, after looking at the Buddha's Sarira for a moment, and then lowering his head to look at the old monk who was already completely lifeless, he was rather hesitant. To be honest, Xiaohua did not have any special burden on the Sarira that did not have an owner. If he refined it, then he refined it. But these Sariras were the Sarira of the Buddhas who had been bitterly cultivating in the exquisite temple for 10,000 years, waiting for him. If he refined it, he could erase the karma of these Buddhas and help them achieve fruition. Naturally, Xiaohua could refine it without any misgivings. But in the end, Xiaohua did not receive the guidance of the Buddhist sect's senior monks. Now that the Buddha's Sarira had just shaved its head and became a monk, he really was not sure. Chapter 3403. Forget it. This Xiao will take it first. Looking at the old monk lying on the ground with a serene face, Xiaohua couldn't help but feel heartache. This kind of thing had happened several times already, making him feel very uncomfortable. He always felt that in this world, good people rarely have good karma, and evil people live a long life. Army. In a trance, the Buddha's relic chanted the incantation, and the bowl-sized golden character fell on the old monk's body. The golden light dispersed, but the old monk's soul didn't come out. The Buddhist 9 syllables incantation didn't have any effect on the old monk, which made Xiaohua quite surprised. Lin. Immediately after, the Buddha's relic chanted the incantation again, and as Xiaohua expected, the old monk's soul still didn't come out. Alas, the old monk bitterly cultivated for a lifetime, but in the end he was still delayed by this king. Xiaohua sighed, feeling that because he became a devil, he was implicated, causing the old monk's soul to be unable to escape from the hands of the heavenly devil. It seems that if this old monk wants to reincarnate, this king will really have to use the secret technique of the tantric sect to refine the old monk's relic? But how can I take out the old monk's relic? Moreover, if I want to walk in the Pure Land, it will be troublesome if I don't understand the language here. Let's see what is recorded in the exquisite temple's Buddhist scriptures first. The Buddha's relic waved its hand, and a Buddhist light shot out, and the pagoda in the main hall was also absorbed into the exquisite pagoda. After the exquisite pagoda and the Buddha's relic were absorbed into the exquisite pagoda, Xiaohua looked at the old monk lying on the ground and was very puzzled. The old monk might not be able to live until tomorrow, but after all, there was a big difference between him and his death today. The old monk should have a lot of instructions for Xiaohua. These instructions could only be taught after Xiaohua shaved his head. Now that the old monk was gone, Xiaohua was once again in the dark. However, Xiaohua was already used to this kind of exploration. He very familiarly had the Buddha's relic take out the Buddhist scriptures that had just been absorbed into the exquisite pagoda. And he himself put the old monk's corpse into the small universe bag, and slowly walked out of the main hall. The seal of overturning the sea above the Shaolin Long Temple had already been withdrawn when Xiaohua entered the main hall. Now, the bright and dazzling sunlight shone directly into the small courtyard. The sunlight was extremely bright. Although Xiaohua was not afraid, he still naturally stretched out his hand and cupped it against his eyes. Just now he had come in a hurry, and left in a hurry as well. He hadn't looked carefully. Now that Xiaohua's gaze swept over the entire courtyard, he sighed even more. This Shaolin Long Temple was even more austere than the Seven Yang Monastery, or even the Jiangqiao Monastery. It seemed that other than the remnants of a fire in the small hut, there were no other traces of people living here. Xiaohua really didn't know how the old monk managed to survive here. After all, Xiaohua didn't see any traces of Buddhist cultivation techniques on him. The sun was very bright. Standing under the sun, Xiaohua didn't feel particularly hot. However, a very strange feeling came from Xiaohua's skin. It was as if he was being roasted, and also as if the wind was blowing. However, there wasn't any wind at this time. The wind and snow from before had disappeared in an instant. 10,000 years ago, there was a senior from the Buddhist sect who set up this place, and even set up the Shaolin Long Temple here. Could it be that they were waiting for me? Xiaohua naturally wouldn't be as pious as the old monk. His thoughts were very simple. Looking at this simple and crude temple, he frowned and pondered. If that's the case, then this Xiao's life experience is naturally within the senior's calculations? This Xiao has been too busy these past 10 days. I actually forgot. While thinking, Xiaohua's mind immediately entered the space. He took out the map of the hidden immortal continent that he had obtained from the star-seizing tower. Without saying anything, he threw it to the green-robed Xiaohua. The green-robed Xiaohua continued to nag, but after being smashed by Xiaohua, he immediately shut his mouth. He obediently took out the jade eyes and hastily checked it. Hey, it seems that the temptation is still very useful. Xiaohua's mind withdrew from the space. He looked at the nascent soul sitting cross-legged in his lower dantian. He was very proud. This nascent soul was very popular at this time. Any primordial spirit that wanted to come out and take a look would use this nascent soul. Unfortunately, the nascent soul realm had not yet stabilized and the nascent soul's body had not yet completely solidified. Otherwise, several primordial spirits would have already started fighting. Of course, if the entire nascent soul was completely solidified, it would only become a late nascent soul realm cultivator. However, for Xiaohua's nascent soul with the Tao of the Heavens as its foundation and the green-robed Xiaohua's secret technique, several primordial spirits taking turns to control the early nascent soul to come out for a stroll, could not be considered a difficult matter, right? Xiaohua's mind withdrew. Immediately, news came from the Buddha Saraira. Xiaohua slightly closed his eyes. Subsequently, he nodded and released his Buddhist sense. He found what he was looking for about 999 zhang, to the west of the Shaolin Long Temple. Xiaohua was about to use the cloud riding technique. However, just as he was about to move, he stopped. He turned his head and looked at the small house where the old monk was eating butter tea. He quickly walked over, and took out a large wooden board. He placed it in front of the main hall. Then, he took out the old monk's corpse from his small qingkuan bag, and solemnly placed it on top of the wooden board. Along with Xiaohua's recitation of the rebirth mantra, a strand of Buddhist light once again emerged from the golden Buddha statue, and landed on the oil lamp. The worn-out oil lamp flashed with a trace of light, and a bean-sized flame appeared out of thin air from the oil lamp. Amitabha Buddha. Excellent, excellent. Xiaohua's Buddhist sense was constantly released. However, he still couldn't find out how this flame was born. Xiaohua couldn't help but sigh. The Buddhist sect's methods were indeed subtle. Xiaohua held the oil lamp in one hand. The flame of the oil lamp didn't seem inferior in the daytime. Xiaohua's other hand was holding the wooden board. The old monk's corpse was peacefully lying on top of it. When the sun shone on his body, it was somewhat holy. Even his bitter chrysanthemum face reflected an indescribable smile. Xiaohua left the Shaolinglong Temple and walked towards the west side of the temple. The Shaolinglong Temple was located on a huge mountain range. The Shaolinglong Temple was located on the highest peak of the mountain range. Xiaohua descended from the highest point of the Shaolinglong Temple. At this moment, he was walking along the mountain range of the Shaolinglong Temple. The path under Xiaohua's feet couldn't be considered a mountain path. It was just some slightly chiseled stones. Moreover, these stones couldn't be seen clearly under the thick snow. However, the pious Xiaohua stepped on the snow step by step. His feet emitted a zhizhi sound. This sound seemed to be the only sound between heaven and earth, causing Xiaohua's heart to become increasingly calm. The further he walked, the stronger the wind above the mountain range. However, the flame of the oil lamp didn't seem to be affected at all. It didn't even sway. 999 zhang seemed to be very far, but after walking step by step, there would eventually be an end. At the end of the road was a small groove. Although there was some snow under the mountain wind, the snow had already been blown thin, revealing the dark mountain rocks. If one looked carefully, they would discover that the dark mountain rocks were different from the color of the mountain rocks outside the groove. This darkness was in patches, clusters, and threads. It should have been caused by the fire. Xiaohua's gaze fell on this place. His eyes revealed compassion. He already knew from the Shaolinglong Temple's Buddhist scriptures that this groove was the place where the monks of the Shaolinglong Temple were cremated. In the past 10,000 years, more than 1,000 Buddhist children had returned to the West. The Buddhist fire that burned their remains had burned the mountain rocks at the foot of the mountain into a black color. Xiaohua respectfully walked in front of the groove. He carefully bent down and prepared to place the old monk's remains on top of the groove. At this moment, a rather indifferent Buddhist sense swept over from the distance. It was like a clear wave overflowing from the top of the Shaolinglong mountain. Oh, this Buddhist sense came abruptly. Xiaohua didn't have time to change his clothes. However, he frowned. As his thoughts flashed, he immediately used the appearance-changing technique. A face with a small nose and small eyes appeared. It was precisely Zhang Xiaohua's appearance. However, in just a moment, Xiaohua's idea changed again. The small nose became tall and straight, and the small eyes became big and spirited. He changed into another appearance. After changing his appearance, Xiaohua wasn't in a hurry. He simply placed the old monk's remains in the groove, put his palms together, and looked into the distance. However, although Xiaohua was standing still, the Buddha's relic in his Naiwan palace was busy. Just now, the Buddha's relic had roughly read through the Buddhist scriptures. Originally, it didn't intend to look at the records of the Pure Land's language. Now that it saw that someone was coming, Xiaohua could only let the Buddha's relic quickly flip through the records. Who would have thought that after the Lingqi sky was broken through, Xiaohua's intelligence had undergone an earth-shattering change. Previously, he had spent a lot of effort to master the language, but in the time it took to eat a meal, he had already made progress. Xiaohua's heart was wild with joy, and at the same time he became more and more stable. Just when Xiaohua was reciting and familiarizing himself with the language of the Pure Land's world, he heard a very unfamiliar roar of a beast. In the distance, a cyan cloud floated over like a cyan lotus. Above the cloud was a cyan lion several zhang in size. This cyan lion looked a bit strange. From head to tail, it had a pure cyan mane without any impurities. Even under its feet, there were 4 rather large cyan lotuses. That cyan lion looked very fierce. Its eyes, which were bigger than a fist, were flashing with cyan brilliance. Looking at the cyan lion again, a boy wearing a monk's robe was sitting cross-legged. The boy's lips were red and his teeth were white. His face had a kind of otherworldly appearance. The top of his head wasn't bald, but was instead clustered into 5 buns. On each of the buns, there seemed to be a golden token engraved with the golden body of Buddha. The boy wasn't empty-handed. In his left hand, there was a cyan lotus. On the long stem, there was a bowl-sized lotus that was blooming vigorously. The boy's right hand was holding a cyan sword. The sword was plain, and there was nothing special about it. Chapter 3404. The boy didn't come alone. About 10 zhang behind him, there was a strange bird flying. This bird was 3 zhang in size, and its 2 zhang long feathers were black and white. Even the waist and the roots of the wings were black, while the tips of the wings were pure white. What was special was that the bird's neck was very long, at least 5 chi long. This 5 chi long neck didn't have a single feather, and if one looked carefully, a faint bronze color could be seen from the depths of the neck. On the back of the bird stood a woman dressed in palace attire. This woman was in her 20s, and her appearance didn't seem to be particularly outstanding. She had large eyes, slightly coarse eyebrows, and seemed to have gone through a lot of hardships. Although her skin was extremely white, the hand holding the soft sword was very large. Even if there was a golden hairpin inserted into her cloud-like hair, it still wouldn't make people drool. Ba Buddha. The boy flew closer, and saw Xiaohua waiting there with his palms together. He also chanted the name of Buddha. This poor monk is Ci Hui. How should I address you? This poor monk. Tipu greets Great Master Ci Hui. When Xiaohua heard that it was a monk of the Ci generation, he couldn't help but be secretly surprised. He hurriedly bowed and replied. Monk Ci Hui was surprised and asked curiously, You? Why are you called Tipu? Although you are of the tantric lineage, shouldn't you also choose a dharma name within my Buddhist lineage? Great Master. Xiaohua smiled bitterly. This poor monk was previously a Buddhist layman disciple, and didn't shave his head and become a monk, so I don't have a real dharma name. Today was supposed to be a good day for this poor monk to shave his head, but this elder suddenly died, and he didn't have time to give this poor monk a dharma name. How is that possible? At this time, Ci Hui's Azure Lion had already set foot on the mountain range of the Great Snow Mountain. Ci Hui simply jumped down from the Azure Lion and walked to the front of the old monk's corpse to take a look. He turned his head and asked Xiaohua, Since you are going to shave your head, naturally you should prepare a dharma name before today, and fill it in the certificate, so that it can be sent to Lane Temple to report. How come you don't have a dharma name when it's time to shave your head? This poor monk doesn't know either. Xiaohua was still smiling. This poor monk did not come from the Great Snow Mountain. Today, I was just passing by the Great Snow Mountain and saw a small temple on the mountain. I wanted to come in and ask for directions, but who would have thought that this elder was already at the end of his life? In order to pass down the mantle of Tantra, this poor monk reluctantly shaved his head. In the end, before the shaving was complete, this elder had already passed away. Therefore this poor monk still does not have a dharma name. Immortal friend Ci Hui. At this moment, the woman riding the strange bird walked down from the sky and said with a smile, Whether it is the courtesy name of my Confucian cultivator, or your Buddhist sect's dharma name, they are just symbols. Could it be that immortal friend wants to find a suitable dharma name for immortal friend Tipu? Ba, this poor monk is too obsessed. Hearing this, Ci Hui child immediately said with a smile, Ci Hui is Ti Hui. Tipu is also Ti Hui. Many thanks for new Tanyue's reminder. There are very few Tantra disciples in the first place. This small temple on the Great Snow Mountain is even more difficult to find disciples, that woman said with a smile. I'm afraid that this master was fancied by this old monk as soon as he came to the Great Snow Mountain, and hurriedly tricked him into the temple. Ba, new Tanyue is too serious. Ci Hui did not get angry and said with a smile, To enter my Buddhist sect, one must have good roots. Without several lifetimes of cultivation, it is simply impossible to enter my Buddhist sect. This monk must also have Buddhist fate. Today he was able to shave his head and enter Tantra. Naturally, that woman was already used to Ci Hui's explanation. She said with a smile, You are the Buddhist sect's #1 strategist. Furthermore, you have the wisdom of 9 lifetimes. How can this little girl be your opponent? You can say whatever you want to say. Ba, new Tanyue is too serious again. Ci Hui wanted to say something again, but thinking about the woman's judgment just now, she smiled slightly, shook her head and looked at the old monk's corpse. That woman looked at Xiaohua with a smile and asked, Little monk, let me ask you. Just now, when the great snow mountain golden body appeared, did it have anything to do with you? This Xiaohua hesitated for a moment. He originally wanted to deny it, but after thinking about it again, the snowy mountain was extremely cold, and there were no temples nearby. Moreover, these two people must have sensed the strange phenomenon just now and rushed over. How could he easily deny it? Besides, now he had a completely different face. Even if he revealed his Taoist cultivation, so what? Yes, it was the strange phenomenon when this poor monk was shaved. Xiaohua simply admitted. Who is New Tanua? Why don't you introduce yourself? Unfortunately, that woman looked at Xi Hui with interest and did not answer Xiaohua's question. Oh, when you shave your head, you have hundreds of miles of psychokinesis on your body. Hearing this, Xi Hui faintly raised her eyebrows. Although it was a question, she was not particularly surprised. Hearing this, Xiaohua was happy, but his face quickly changed into panic. He said in a low voice, "This poor monk does not know. This poor monk only knows that when I was shaved, there was a very strong wind. Even the hair this poor monk shaved was blown away." At that time, the old monk returned to the west. This poor monk was in a hurry and did not pay attention to the range of the psychokinesis. Ba, this monk really has a foundation. I don't know which senior brother's reincarnation you are. Xi Hui congratulated, but her eyes looked up and down at Xiaohua and asked again. This poor monk only knows that Tantric Buddhism disciples all wear saffron monk robes. This poor monk does not know why this monk is wearing saffron Taoist robes? How would I know? Xiaohua rolled his eyes and said, "This is all this old monk's arrangement. If Grandmaster feels there is a problem, you can ask this old monk." Asked. Xi Hui was very curious about Xiaohua's rolling eyes and this question. It seemed to be different from the monks she usually saw. The woman at the side said in a timely manner, "Fellow Taoist Xi Hui, if fellow Taoist Tipu said so, I'm afraid you have already lost, right? Fellow Taoist not only wants to go to that place with this little woman, but also wants to invite fellow Taoist Tipu to go with you, right?" Hearing this, a trace of a bitter smile appeared on Xi Hui's face. She shook her head slightly and said, Ba, this is all because this poor monk's cultivation is not enough. The little bit of desire to win in my heart cannot be erased. Now I have fallen into New Tenyu's trap." "Fellow Taoist, you can't say that," the woman said with a smile. "Meeting is fate. If you should not go to that place, I'm afraid you would not have met this little woman today, right? Moreover, if you should not go to that place, why would you make this bet with this little woman in order to leave?" I'm afraid this is the only way to put it." Xi Hui smiled bitterly again. "This poor monk lost my mind. I actually only remembered that condensing the golden body requires psychokinesis, but forgot that the reincarnated senior also has psychokinesis when shave." The woman said with a smile, "The conditions this little woman provided are also not bad. Could it be that you did not come for these conditions?" "Perhaps." Xi Hui declined to comment. She turned to Xiaohua and said with a smile, "Monk, this poor monk has a good thing here." When Xiaohua heard the two of them talking about that place, he immediately lost interest. He had just formed his nascent soul, and his Tao realm was not stable. He did not want to go to any dangerous place. What he wanted to do was to find a place to meditate. Moreover, the space meridian above the snowy mountain was unstable. If it was as Sun Jian said, he did not want to pass through the East Sea and South Sea. Then he must hurry back to the Xiaoyu continent before the space meridian collapsed. "Not going." Xiaohua shook his head like a rattledrum. Without waiting for Xi Hui to finish speaking, he immediately shouted, "This poor monk still has other things to do. After the old monk's skin is melted and his sarira is taken out, this poor monk will quickly leave this place. Leave this place." The woman's smiling face showed astonishment. "Little master is already a monk in this temple. If he does not cultivate here, where else can he go?" Xiaohua was speechless. He could not arrogantly say that this temple was built just to wait for him, right? He could not say that this temple had no meaning to exist when he came, right? "Lazy little monk." Xi Hui smiled. "Your tantric sect is not prosperous. Now that you have just entered the tantric sect, Your master has already returned to the west. Now you also want to abandon the temple and flee. This really makes this poor monk lament. Can't the cultivation of your previous lives make you wake up? Amitabha Buddha Xiaohua also smiled. With Buddha in my eyes, which part of the Pure Land is not Buddha? With Buddha in your body, which part of your every action is not cultivation? With Buddha in your heart, which part of the mountain and stone is not a temple? Why did Great Master not painstakingly guard the lamp in the temple, and come to the snowy mountain to be carefree? When Xiai Hui heard this, her expression slightly changed. She hurriedly raised her hand and said, Amitabha Buddha, this poor monk was wrong. Although little monk has just shaved his head in this life, the root of wisdom of several lives is still there. This poor monk previously wanted to recommend little monk to other temples to cultivate. Now it seems that this was a big mistake. If Great Master is not wrong, then this poor monk is also not right. If there is right and wrong in your heart, how can it still be free of filth? Xiaohua still answered with a smile, not bowing to salute. Xiai Hui's expression changed even more. He almost did not dare to believe his own ears. He lowered his head to look at the old monk on the wooden board, then raised his head to look at the calm and collected Xiaohua. He took a few steps back, put his palms together and said in a low voice, Amitabha Buddha, this poor monk, has really learned something. Seeing this young monk's astonished appearance, Xiaohua was quite proud. He did not feel that he could reach the realm of a senior monk like Xiai Hui thought, but many times he could see through things with the eyes of a bystander and speak out like this. And it seemed that every time Xiaohua spoke out, he had the posture of shocking the world with a single brilliant feat. This also showed that no matter if it was Buddhism or Taoism, when one cultivated to a high realm, they would achieve the same result through different means. Xiai Hui lowered her head. Xiaohua was proud. The woman in the palace dress next to him pursed her lips and smiled. She could not help but say, Fellow Taoist Xiai Hui, saying is one thing, doing is another. This snowy mountain is covered with snow all year round. If the sky could be as clear as today, the herdsmen of the snowy mountain would not have to live such bitter and cold lives. These words, you can say it, I can say it, anyone can say it, but who can do it? Chapter 3405. Amitabha, fellow immortal, has misunderstood this poor monk. Xiai Hui raised her head and looked at the woman. This poor monk is not stumped by this little monk's question. This poor monk is only thinking. This intelligent little monk, this Buddhist disciple of Tantric Buddhism with roots of wisdom. What should this poor monk do to guide him into the right path of Buddhist cultivation? Should this poor monk find an accomplished monk to teach him? Or should this poor monk do it personally? Xiaohua was shocked. His gaze swept over the young monk, and he asked indifferently, could it be that this poor monk is so mischievous in front of Master? Then this poor monk would like to ask Master, what is the right path and what is the wrong path? You have yet to attain fruition, so how do you know which path is the right path? Even if Master has attained fruition, is your path definitely the right path? Is your right path definitely this poor monk's right path? Is I sure to attain fruition just because I follow your path? Hearing this, Xiai Hui's face became even more bitter, as if she had a gold thread in her mouth. She lowered her head and chanted again. Amitabha, seeing this little monk today, this poor monk thinks of this poor monk's past. You don't know the immensity of heaven and earth. You don't know the vastness of the sea and sky. You don't know that there are many mysteries in this world that cannot be known by others. Humans are nothing more than dust in this world. What can cause clouds and rain with a flip of the hand? What can cause a dragon to fly in the sky with a flip of the hand? They are all absurd. Apart from arrogance and contempt, what else can a human be? Only when one truly recognizes one's insignificance can one truly cultivate. The so-called cultivation is not how many Buddhist cultivation techniques one cultivates, or how many Buddhist secret techniques one cultivates, but how many Buddhist scriptures one reads, and how many good karma one bears. This poor monk even wants to say that the words in Buddhist scriptures can also kill, and only the spirit in Buddhist scriptures can let people live. In Xiai Hui's words, the first half made Xiaohua sigh with emotion. It was exactly as he had thought, but the second half made Xiaohua puzzled again. However, Xiaohua could also see that Ci Hui's words came from the bottom of her heart, and she did not hide anything. The first Buddhist expert that Xiaohua met was Hanzhu. Hanzhu was a complete liar who tricked Xiaohua miserably. Later on, Xiaohua met a few more Buddhist disciples and none of them left a good impression on him. Therefore, even the old monk who had just passed away was unable to completely change Xiaohua's bad impression of the Buddhist sect. And at this time, Ci Hui had just met him, and she was actually thinking so much for him, and was even distressed for him. This made Xiaohua's heart vigilant. He didn't know what kind of medicine Ci Hui was selling in her gourd. If I can understand the spirit in the Buddhist scriptures, even if I throw the Buddhist scriptures to the back of my head, I can still attain the fruit. Ci Hui obviously didn't know what Xiaohua was thinking. She still said, if you can't understand this spirit, then you should properly study the Buddhist scriptures and truly understand Buddha's great wish. Purely showing off and arguing, purely speaking words, you can only walk into a dead end. It can't even be considered a wrong path. Grandmaster, you're overstating things, right? Xiaohua's heart gave birth to a sense of victory as he said indifferently. Ci Hui's face was still distressed. It seemed that every word Xiaohua said made her heart ache. It was like a knife stabbing into her heart. Little monk, you don't need to say any more. This poor monk will ask you 3 questions. You see if they are correct or not. Ci Hui asked very regretfully. Grandmaster, please speak. Xiaohua nodded. He wanted to see what this young monk wanted to say. Your Buddhist cultivation technique has made quite a bit of progress. If this poor monk is not wrong, I'm afraid that you have already reached the Rugi realm? Correct, what Grandmaster said is correct. Xiaohua slightly frowned. He didn't want to answer, but after thinking for a moment he still answered honestly. You have studied very few Buddhist scriptures. So much so that this poor monk feels that you may not have even read a single one. Xiaohua's eyebrows twitched. Before today, he indeed hadn't read a single Buddhist scripture, but in this short moment, he had already read half of the Buddhist scriptures in his Naiwan palace. Xiaohua looked at the woman who pursed her lips and smiled. He sighed and nodded. What Grandmaster said is correct. This is the 3rd question. Ci Hui turned to look at the woman and said with a wry smile. This poor monk suspects that this little monk is not a Buddhist disciple of the Pure Land world. What? Xiaohua was surprised and even more shocked. At the beginning he spoke a bit slowly because he had adapted to the Pure Land world's language that was somewhat similar to the Sanskrit language. Now he was already extremely proficient. He believed that it was impossible for others to see through his origin, but he didn't expect that Ci Hui would still see through him. Therefore Xiaohua couldn't help but touch his nose and said with a wry smile. Grandmaster, what do you mean? Little monk, the woman smiled, as if she was playing a double act with Ci Hui. Fellow Taoist, Ci Hui means, you are just a monk who has just shaved his head. Even if you haven't heard of fellow Taoist Ci Hui's Buddhist name before, after all, he is a senior of the Ci generation. Look at your appearance, what Grandmaster? Do Buddhist disciples call their seniors like that? Also, where did you get your Tipfa name? As far as I know, there is no such generation in the Pure Land world. When Xiaohua heard this, he already had an idea in his heart. He said with a smile, didn't Grandmaster Ci Hui say it just now? This poor monk has never read any Buddhist scriptures, and also doesn't know any Buddhist seniority. I had just shaved my head before the 2 of you came to the Great Snow Mountain. Grandmaster Ci Hui looks so young, even younger than this poor monk. If it weren't for the 2 of you having great magical powers, this poor monk wouldn't have called him Grandmaster. Saying this, Xiaohua glanced at the azure lion, and the strange bird that stopped not far away. You don't need to say it. The bitterness on Ci Hui's face didn't decrease. He looked at the old monk on the groove and asked, what is this elder's Buddhist name? This poor monk doesn't know. Xiaohua shook his head. When this poor monk came, he had already asked, but the elder didn't answer. At the same time, he also didn't give this poor monk any Buddhist name. Tantric Buddhism, oh Tantric Buddhism. Ci Hui sighed. This poor monk doesn't know what to say. Tantric Buddhism has been around for so long. It's unlikely that they would pass on the traitorous sutra to a little monk who has just entered the sect, right? If Grandmaster doesn't want to say it, then don't say it. Xiaohua replied. Wait until this poor monk incinerates the elder's body and takes out the elder's Saraira merit. You can start now. Xia Hui nodded. He took 2 steps forward and arrived in front of the wooden plank. He clasped his hands together and started to chant. His voice was very rhythmic. Although it wasn't loud, it clearly floated within 3 zhang 33 m. Strands of Buddhist light were emitted from Xia Hui's body and slowly covered the old monk's body. Amitba. Xiaohua also chanted the rebirth mantra. He walked forward and lit the wooden plank with the oil lamp in his hand. The bright yellow flame on the wooden plank gradually rose and slowly wrapped around the old monk's corpse. Xiaohua's heart was somewhat desolate. This old monk had bitterly guarded this place for nearly 100 years. In the end, only this ball of flame accompanied him. Everything else had turned into smoke and dust floating in the air. You can start now, little monk. Seeing that the flame was gradually growing bigger, and Xiaohua was still chanting with his head lowered, Xia Hui couldn't help but remind him. Start? Start what? Xiaohua was greatly surprised. He stopped chanting and raised his head to look at Xia Hui. Xia Hui was stunned and blurted out. Aren't you going to burn this elder's Saraira? Xiaohua's heart jumped. He knew that things weren't good. He hurriedly let the Buddha Saraira flip through the Buddhist scriptures and Buddhist scriptures. He braced himself and said, after burning the elder's body, won't the Saraira naturally come out? Let this poor monk do it. If we wait any longer, it will be too late. Xia Hui opened his mouth to explain, but looking at the flame, he could only pat his forehead. A Buddhist light flew out from the top of his head. Then his hands moved again. It was actually a Buddhist seal that Xiaohua had never seen before. Little monk. The woman at the side was originally solemn with her head lowered. At this moment, she couldn't help but speak again. Saraira is the foundation of the cultivation of a Buddhist disciple. Presumably, little monks should also have a Saraira, right? These bodhisattvas would use a Buddhist mystic art to condense their negative karma and merit into their relic before they left. When the Buddhist fire burned their bodies, the negative karma would condense into the relic and fuse with it. The Saraira can protect the Buddhist disciple's karma in this life, and prepare for the Buddhist disciple's cultivation in the next life. And this elder looks very old. I'm afraid he doesn't have any Buddhist cultivation, and is just an ordinary monk. These monks can't condense their karma and merit. Therefore, even if they can use the Buddhist fire to create a Saraira, it will be melted bones and other things. Other than being a souvenir and for people to admire, it has no other use. If you want to keep their karma and merit, you can only rely on external forces. And this kind of external force. To be honest, fellow Taoist Xia Hui doesn't have this kind of divine ability. He can only create a Saraira. And this Saraira isn't that Saraira. Xiaohua suddenly understood and said with a bitter smile. This poor monk really doesn't know. The woman glanced at Xiaohua and shook her head slightly. Looks like you really don't know. You only have the cultivation of the Buddhist sect. While speaking, Xia Hui had already formed a seal with both hands. The Buddhist light emitted from his forehead condensed in the Buddhist seal, just like the 9 syllables mantra in Xiaohua's mouth. Go, seeing the golden characters condense in the Buddhist seal, Xia Hui raised his hand and lightly scolded. The golden characters the size of a fist shone brightly and flew out from Xia Hui's hand. The brilliance of the golden characters was extremely bright. Xiaohua unconsciously closed his eyes. And at this very moment, something strange happened. The old monk's body that was originally lying motionless on the wooden board suddenly moved. The old monk's closed eyes also opened. His turbid eyes looked at the sky blankly. But in just a moment, the Buddhist fire and the Buddhist light were reflected in his eyes. The old monk's orange peel-like face unexpectedly showed a rare kind of gratification and relaxation, as if he had put down a heavy burden. His lips trembled slightly. Looking at the shape of his mouth, it should be Southern Gate Maitreya Buddha. However, without waiting for the old monk to open his mouth, the Buddhist seal in Xia Hui's hand had already expanded from the size of a fist to the size of 1 zhang, covering the entire groove at the foot of the mountain. Boom! On the wooden board, the Buddhist fire on the old monk's body flourished and unexpectedly turned into a pair of third-grade lotuses, completely submerging the old monk. The old monk smiled. The turbidity in his eyes unexpectedly disappeared, and a kind of clarity flashed. That relaxed smile, and the satisfaction of getting what he wanted condensed on his face. Chapter 3406. After the lotus-shaped flame flourished, it turned into 3 balls of flame and gradually disappeared. At the moment when the 3 balls of flame were extinguished, a faint shadow flew out from one of the flames. It was the old monk's soul. The old monk respectfully bowed to Xiai Hui and said, "Umitba, thank you, venerable one." Immediately, the soul turned into thousands of fireflies and disappeared. Umitba, seeing this, Xiaohua was delighted in his heart. At the same time, he was also sincerely convinced. Just a moment ago, in front of the main hall of the Shaolinglong Temple, he used the Buddhist sect's 9 syllables mantra, but it didn't have the slightest effect. Here, Xiai Hui formed a Buddhist seal and immediately helped the old monk cross over. "Thank you, Great Master Xiai Hui." Xiaohua happily bowed and said, "If Great Master didn't help, I'm afraid I would have disappointed the elder. The elder's relics and other things can't be left behind. Take this relic." Looking at the place where the old monk's soul just flew out, a relic smaller than a little finger appeared. Xiai Hui said with a bitter face, "He introduced you to Buddhism, so he should be your guide. His karma. If you have magical powers in the future, you should help him eliminate it. Of course, this poor monk can't guarantee whether or not there is any karma in this relic." Yes, this poor monk knows. This female benefactor has already explained it. Xiaohua looked at the relic floating in the air. The color was very turbid, and there were many different colors inside. It wasn't particularly pure. Obviously, the old monk's cultivation realm wasn't very high. Xiaohua waved his hand, and was about to take the sarira. However, he had a thought and slowly walked over. He carefully picked it up with his hands and put it into his arms. After doing all this, he turned his head and asked Xiai Hui, "Great Master, this little monk has a question. I don't know if I can ask you?" Hearing Xiaohua call himself little monk, the bitter expression on Xiai Hui's face slightly disappeared. She nodded and said, "Monk, if you have something to say, please say it." The old monk has bitterly guarded the Great Snow Mountain, so he must be someone with a tenacious mind. Similarly, I've heard the old monk say that he has studied Buddhism for nearly 100 years, so why is his sarira not as sparkling and translucent as others? Xiaohua naturally didn't hold back and immediately asked. Earlier, Nu Tanua had already said that the eminent monk who has the secret technique of our Buddhism sect can refine the sarira that he has cultivated all his life before he goes to the West. The process of refining naturally has the effect of eliminating karma. When the karma is gone, the sarira will naturally look very good. Xiai Hui explained. This elder does not practice mystic techniques and only studies Buddhist scriptures. He does not have the ability to condense his own negative karma. Therefore, it is not strange that the colors in the relic are mixed. However, for you this kind of mixed color relic is the best. The old monk is your guide. Helping him get rid of his karma is what you should do. If you help him get rid of his negative karma, your merit will also increase. Even when you condense your golden body, his sarira can also be used. And in those sarira that have already been condensed, the simple negative karma has been eliminated. What is left is the heavy negative karma, which is not easy to remove. Even if you want to use it to condense your golden body, you have to be careful. Speaking of this, Xiai Hui was a little radiant. She said again, "As far as little monk knows, your Buddhism sect has already fallen to a lower level. Now in the Pure Land world, the Buddha Lord of My Lane Temple has passed down the Mahayana Buddhist scripture. Under this Mahayana Buddhist scripture, even an ordinary monk can condense sarira. Little monk understands. Thank you for your guidance." Xiaohua didn't know what Mahayana Buddhist scripture was, and what Hinayana Buddhist scripture was. He only slightly lowered his posture, and then slightly muttered to himself as he prepared to say goodbye. But at this moment there was a faint chanting sound in the distance. Then, a faint golden light flashed from the chanting and flew over the Great Snow Mountain. "Oh, Buddha's radiance illumination?" Xiai Hui raised her eyebrows and raised her hand. The green lotus that she had just put away in her left hand suddenly appeared. The green lotus also emitted a deep chanting sound and flashed with a Buddhist light that seemed to be breathing. Whoosh! Like a sword of light. A strand of Buddhist light emerged from the golden light and entered the green lotus. Then the golden light and the chanting continued to fly forward. Xiao Hua withdrew his gaze from the distant golden light and looked at the green lotus. He saw a Buddhist document that had already lost its Buddhist light and was quietly lying there. Xiai Hui put away the green lotus, reached out her hand and picked up the Buddhist edict. She opened it and looked at it, then handed it to Xiao Hua and said, "Little monk, this Buddhist light shines through your big snow mountain. You are the only disciple of Tantric Buddhism here. You should accept this Buddhist edict." "Ah, Buddhist decree? What do you mean?" Xiao Hua stared blankly, somewhat at a loss. "Can this little monk not accept it? The Buddha's light illumination is the way the Lane Temple sends out the Buddha's decree to all the temples in the Pure Land world." Xiai Hui was very patient and explained, "Wherever the Buddhist light passes, all the temples have to accept the Buddhist edict. You are a Buddhist disciple, naturally you have to accept it." But, speaking until here, Xiai Hui was somewhat embarrassed. Xiao Hua did not know how to accept the Buddhist light. Now the Buddhist edict should be received by Xiai Hui herself. Xiao Hua not accepting it was not a big deal. There is no content. Xiai Hui pondered a little and said, "Buddha Lord has decreed that if possible, every temple in my Pure Land world must send 1 or 2 disciples to Changsheng Town in Hidden Immortal Continent, Xiai Hang." Without waiting for Xiao Hua to speak, that woman was suddenly startled. She narrowed her eyes and looked at Xiai Hui. Xiai Hui's eyes flashed with a somewhat complicated expression. She looked at that woman and nodded slightly without saying anything. "Humph. Your Buddha Lord is really good at scheming." That woman snorted coldly. Could it be that he really wants to build a 99 zhang tall golden body of Namo Guanyin Bodhisattva in Changsheng Town? Ah? Xiao Hua raised his eyebrows. His heart was overwhelmed with shock. This Xiai Hui shook her head. This poor monk does not know the Buddha Lord's plan. This poor monk is only a Buddhist disciple. If he does this, that woman opened her mouth, seemingly having a lot of complaints. However, when they reached her mouth, they turned into helplessness, leaving behind only a trace of hidden bitterness. "I'm afraid it will cause a huge wave. Little monk, quickly accept this Buddhist edict. This poor monk still has something to say to you." Xiai Hui did not dare to talk too much with that woman. She turned her head and passed the Buddhist edict to Xiao Hua again. Xiao Hua hurriedly waved his hand. "Master, this little monk does not have the ability to accept this Buddhist edict. This is your divine ability. You should keep it for yourself. This little monk will go back and recite scriptures in front of the Buddha." That woman could not help but laugh. She looked at Xiai Hui and said, "Fellow Taoist Xiai Hui, you really made an unnecessary move. Forget it." Xiai Hui looked at Xiao Hua's shrinking appearance. Obviously, he was not prepared to accept the Buddhist edict. She smiled bitterly and said, "Since you are not willing to accept it, this poor monk can only leave this Buddhist edict behind. Of course, you are the only monk in this snowy mountains temple. Moreover, you have just shaved your head. According to the Buddhist edict, you do not need to go to the longevity town." "It is good that Master knows," Xiao Hua said with a smile. However, at this point, Xiai Hui changed the topic and said, "However, this poor monk still has something to discuss with you. If Master wants to go to that place, then it is better not to mention it." Xiao Hua hurriedly waved his hand, not giving Xiai Hui the opportunity to speak. However, Xiao Hua still underestimated Xiai Hui's persistence. Xiai Hui did not even look at Xiao Hua's waving hand and said, "You have the root of wisdom. Moreover, when you shaved your head, there was a Buddhist vision. In the future, you will definitely be a pillar of my Buddhist sect. If you had a monk by your side to guide your cultivation, this poor monk would not say anything." After all, Tantric Buddhism is different from the other 12 sections. However, in the current situation, although you have entered my Buddhist sect, there is no one to guide you in cultivation. You are still in the same situation as before. You only have Buddhist divine abilities but not the protection of my Buddhist sect's dharma. You should know that Buddha is 1 foot tall and the devil is 10 feet tall. Your cultivation is very easy to go astray. It is like a child with great strength holding a great killing weapon. If you are not careful, you will hurt others and also hurt yourself. This poor monk has also suffered a great loss before. Therefore, this poor monk does not dare to say that he is your senior. This poor monk only wants to ask you to follow this poor monk. This poor monk will tell you what he has learned. C.I. Hui's face was still somewhat bitter. Seeing this, Xiaohua's heart warmed. In fact, Xiaohua thought that if he did not accept the Buddhist edict just now, C.I. Hui could use it to threaten him. C.I. Hui could even use the name of a senior to ask him to follow. Of course, just now, C.I. Hui could also use the opportunity of refining the old monk's Saraira to raise conditions for Xiaohua. However, C.I. Hui simply ignored these opportunities. She only used a pleading tone to speak to Xiaohua. She spoke very sincerely, as if she was an old friend who had known Xiaohua for a long time, and wanted to ask Xiaohua for help. Xiaohua had always been amenable to coaxing but not coercion. Now that he heard it, he could not help but secretly ponder. In fact, what Xiaohua was worried about now was that he did not want C.I. Hui and that woman to know his Dao sect cultivation. He did not want them to know his identity as Dao sect's Xiaohua. As for what the two of them were planning, Xiaohua was not afraid. Even if the two of them were nascent soul cultivators, Xiaohua's Dao sect cultivation had completely recovered, and he had even advanced to nascent soul. Even if he could not beat them, escaping would not be a problem. Speaking of Yuanying realm being unstable, this was indeed Xiaohua's misgivings. However, Xiaohua's situation was different from others. Others only had one primordial spirit. If they wanted to stabilize their realm, they could only meditate. However, Xiaohua had many primordial spirits. Any one of them could replace Xiaohua in meditating. Even if the green-robed Xiaohua entered the Yuanying realm, the effect would be better than Xiaohua's. Furthermore, stabilizing one's realm was a gradual process. Xiaohua had just advanced to nascent soul a few days ago, and there was no situation where his Dao foundation was unstable. He did not necessarily have to cultivate in seclusion. Traveling to the Pure Land was not necessarily a bad thing. At least he could see what the so-called Pure Land was like. The only thing that Xiaohua was afraid of was time. He had to pass through as much as possible before the space meridian collapsed, and return to the hidden immortal continent as soon as possible. After all, the matter of Jiang country's recovery had just begun, and there would definitely be many places where he would need to appear. After thinking for a while, Xiaohua raised his head and said, "This little monk thanks Master for his kind intentions. This little monk wants to ask, where are you going? What do you need this little monk to do? How long will it take?" Chapter 3407. This C.I. Hui hesitated slightly, looked at the woman, and said in a low voice, "This matter. Please explain it to me. Actually, it won't take much time. We're going to pay a visit to an expert from the Dao sect. If we can ask him to help, that would be for the best. I don't need to do anything. I just need to listen to immortal C.I. Hui's teachings." The woman had already thought this through and spoke without hesitation. "If that expert from the Dao sect is unwilling to go, we may need to borrow a Dharma treasure from him. When that time comes, I will support that Dharma treasure. Little monk, you may need to use your golden body to exert some strength. How long will it take?" Xiaohua frowned. 1 month should be enough. The woman saw that Xiaohua was a bit impatient, so she raised her eyebrows and replied indifferently. Xiaohua muttered to himself for a moment. He knew that there shouldn't be any problems in a month's time. After all, when he checked earlier, the spatial meridian didn't show any obvious signs of collapse. However, Xiaohua still said cautiously, "Master, if you want me to go, I have 2 conditions." "Hee, you little monk." The woman pointed at Xiaohua and said, "Others can't follow immortal C.I. Hui even if they want to. Now that immortal C.I. Hui has taken the initiative to find you, it seems like he's begging you." "No matter, little monk, just say it. This is what I'm begging you," C.I. Hui said indifferently. "I can go with Master, But if I feel that it's dangerous, I can leave immediately. Xiao Hua said in all seriousness. My cultivation is limited and can't be compared to the two of you. Of course, how could there be danger? Xia Hui and the woman spoke at almost the same time. The woman was clearly a bit displeased. Xiao Hua ignored the woman's reaction and said, the second condition is that I want to ask if Master knows Jinshan Temple's Silent Void Zen Master? Jinshan Temple's Silent Void Zen Master? Xia Hui was slightly stunned. She didn't know why Xiao Hua mentioned Silent Void. She nodded and said, of course I know. Why are you looking for him? I've heard Silent Void Zen Master's teachings before, and have some friendship with him. If you have something, I can tell you. Yes, even if you want to become his disciple. It's nothing. This little monk has been repeatedly instructed by the old monk that there are some matters that I need to discuss with Still Void Great Zen Master. Great Zen Master only needs to tell this little monk the location of Jinshan Temple. How could Xiao Hua tell the truth? Xia Hui smiled. What's so difficult about that? He then explained the location of Jinshan Temple and said, if possible, this poor monk can go with you to visit the great Zen Master. Hee, thank you so much, Grandmaster. Xiao Hua smiled and bowed. Since that's the case, can you come with us? The woman urged. Xiao Hua looked at the wooden planks and other objects that had already turned into ashes, as well as the newly added fire marks on the grooves. He sighed and said, please wait for a moment. This little monk will return to the temple to take a look. If there's nothing missing, I'll immediately return with you too. Little monk, come back quickly. She waved her hand, and the strange bird in the distance let out a long cry and flew over to the woman. The woman floated onto the bird, and the strange bird spread its wings and flew up into the sky, waiting quietly. Seeing the woman leave, clouds appeared under Xiao Hua's feet, and he also flew towards Xiaolinglong Temple. Looking at Xiao Hua's departing figure, Xia Hui thought for a moment, then she also flew onto the azure lion. Buddha clouds appeared under the azure lion's feet, and it landed beside the woman. Seeing Xia Hui fly over, the woman couldn't help but grumble. Immortal friend Xia Hui, didn't you say before that we would come over to take a look? Why are there so many problems? Is this little monk called Zhu Tepu worthy of your attention? Immortal friend Xia Hui sat on the azure lion, and said with a smile, my Buddhist sect emphasizes karma the most. Since we encountered a Buddhist phenomenon here, then this Buddha must be related to this poor monk. Look at this little monk's sharp aura. It's exactly the same as this poor monk in the past. This poor monk really can't bear to see him walk the wrong path like this poor monk. Everyone has their own path. That little monk is right. The woman said somewhat disdainfully. Your path isn't his path. You can't walk the path for him, and you can't hinder him from walking his own path. But if he has someone else's guidance, at least he won't walk the wrong path. Xia Hui didn't mind, and said with a smile. Moreover, didn't you see that he also knows the cloud riding technique? Your cultivation as a Confucian cultivator should be of some use in that place. This little monk is somewhat mysterious. When the woman heard Xia Hui mention Xiao Hua's Confucian cultivation, she slightly frowned. Not only did he not call you senior, he also didn't call me senior, and I can't sense what grade his Confucian cultivation has truly reached. This is karma. Xia Hui nodded. Perhaps this time, we'll need his help when we go to that place. I hope so. The woman slightly nodded, a faint sadness appearing in her eyes. He's here. While speaking, Xiao Hua's figure flew out from the foothills, and Xia Hui said with a smile, he didn't ask about this matter before, but now that we're going together, we'll definitely have to explain it to him. Hee, that's natural. The woman said with a smile, there's nothing to hide about this matter. Since he's going, we'll naturally have to explain it to him. At this point the woman frowned. The little monk doesn't seem to have a mount. You'll have to take care of him. Of course, I can't let you take care of him. Xia Hui smiled and patted the indigo lion to Xiao Hua's side. Seeing the strange bird and the indigo lion flying over, Xiao Hua raised his voice. Master, this little monk can go now. But before we go, shouldn't you explain to this little monk where we're going? Of course, Xia Hui said with a smile. I've already told fellow Taoist Xian about this matter, and asked her to explain it to you. Xian? Xiaohua frowned, and immediately thought of Princess Bai Hua, Xian, and said to himself, why are they both surnamed Xian? Could it be related to this woman, and by new country? However, Xiaohua still smiled. Please explain, fellow Taoist Xian. It's nothing much, I'll explain as we walk. Xian looked at Xiaohua, and didn't show any displeasure because of Xiaohua's disrespect, and said, moreover, if it's convenient, I feel that this little monk should change into a monk's robe. This tantric monk's robe really doesn't look pleasing to the eye. Hee, that's true. Tantric disciples rarely walk in the Pure Land world. This little monk will attract a lot of attention. Xiai Hui also nodded and asked, little monk, if you don't have an extra monk's robe, this poor monk has an extra one here. Xiaohua touched his nose, looked at the monk's robe on Xiai Hui's body, then looked at his own yellow monk's robe, and said readily, if that's the case, then that's for the best. This little monk doesn't want to be stared at by others. Immediately after, Xiaohua took the monk's robe from Xiai Hui, and caught up with Xian again. After hearing about the place she was going to, Xiaohua sat on the indigo lion's butt, and followed the two people into the distance. In just the time it took to eat a meal, Xian had already explained the matter, but the more Xiaohua listened, the more he frowned. Because according to Xian, she was going to invite Xiai Hui and a Tao sect cultivator by the name of Heaven Flipping Venerable to a secret place. This place was passed down from ancient times, and it was there before the Confucian cultivators and Buddhist sect joined hands to destroy the Tao sect. Moreover, this secret place was left behind by the Tao sect, and there were formations set up by the experts of the Tao sect. And there were even monsters that the Confucian cultivators and Buddhist sect didn't know about. What shocked Xiaohua the most was that Xian wanted to go to this place for an immortal tool. Yes, that's right, an immortal tool that only immortals can use. As for Xian's identity, Xian didn't mention it, and Xiaohua also asked, but Xian just smiled and didn't answer. Looking at Xian riding the strange bird, Xiaohua sat on the indigo lion's butt, and fell into deep thought. From Xian's words, Xiaohua faintly smelled the scent of a conspiracy, because whether it was Xian's identity, the secret place, or the immortal tool, they all gave Xiaohua a kind of uneasy feeling. In the Dawn-Rain continent, Xiaohua also encountered this kind of thing, and it seemed that every matter had a bad ending, and every bad ending made Xiaohua feel like he had a narrow escape from death. Immortal tool, a magic tool used by immortals. Xiaohua had never heard of it before in the Dawn-Rain continent. Although Xiaohua could already refine spirit tools, and he also knew the power of spirit tools, but he never dared to imagine the power and appearance of magic tools used by immortals. This Xian was obviously a Confucian cultivator, so how did she know the secret place? Why didn't she have any scruples about looking for that immortal tool? Great Master Xiai Hui Xiaohua pondered for a long time, but he didn't have any plans, so he could only open his eyes and ask, Immortal friend Xian, what is her identity? You actually followed her to look for the immortal tool. Aren't you afraid of falling into her trap? At this time, Xiai Hui didn't take out the green lotus and sword, but quietly sat cross-legged in front of Xiaohua. Hearing Xiaohua's words, she slightly leaned to the side and said with a smile, this poor monk also doesn't know what identity immortal friend Xian has. This poor monk met her for the first time in Qinghuan Mountain 70 years ago, and then we met a few more times. Although she was a Confucian cultivator, she didn't have any prejudice against my Buddhist sect, and we talked very happily so we could be considered old friends. A few years ago, she sent a message to this poor monk, saying that she had a big discovery, and wanted to invite this poor monk. This poor monk naturally gladly agreed. Because she wanted to make some preparations, she pushed it to these few days. As for the immortal tool, I only heard about it a few days ago. That thing is a Tao sect cultivator's treasure, and has nothing to do with my Buddhist sect's disciples, so this poor monk only wanted to remind her. Since immortal friend Xian is already prepared, how about this poor monk accompany her? It's that simple? Xiaohua was a bit flabbergasted. This Xiai Hui seemed to be too unguarded, right? She didn't even know Xian's origin. Yet she followed her and even pulled him in. Looking at Xia Hui, Xiaohua was a bit suspicious whether this young monk was deliberately pulling him down. Chapter 3408. Looking at Xiaohua's puzzled gaze, Xia Hui smiled and said, "Little monk, sometimes you can't think too clearly about the matters of the world. If you think too clearly, you won't be able to do anything. This poor monk only knows that he is a Buddhist disciple, and has no interest in that so-called immortal tool. And fellow Taoist Xian only invited this poor monk to help her break the formation. As for other matters, this poor monk really doesn't want to ask too much." The problem is Xiaohua was flustered and exasperated. "Master, why are you pulling this little monk? This little monk still wants to cultivate in the temple." Xiaohua was so anxious that he almost called the Xiao out. Xia Hui was still neither fast nor slow as she said indifferently, "Little monk, is this your plan? No matter how this poor monk looks at it, you don't look like a Buddhist disciple who can cultivate peacefully? Then tell me, what is a Buddhist disciple who cultivates peacefully like?" Xiaohua rolled his eyes and asked in a bad mood. "At the very least, you have to respectfully call other people senior. At the very least, you have to humbly ask other people about things you don't understand. At the very least, you have to get used to chanting scriptures under the lamp without waiting for Xia Hui to finish speaking." Xiaohua waved his hand and said, "Senior, isn't it just a senior? What's so difficult about it?" Before this little monk entered Buddhism, this little monk didn't call other people senior. Since you are a monk, then you have to be less impetuous, more steady, less suspicious and more trusting. Xia Hui smiled cheerfully and said, "Since you are a Buddhist disciple, this poor monk won't ignore it. Whether you are from Tantric Buddhism, strict flower school, or other sects, this poor monk has the responsibility to properly guide you." "Sai, forget it." Xiaohua was speechless. Why did these words sound like he was reprimanding Xiao Jian? Now that karma came out of Xia Hui's mouth, it actually made him seem so mischievous. However, thinking about how other things can be used to improve Jade, and how his Buddhist skills were not small, Xiaohua could only lower his head. Seeing Xiaohua admit defeat, Xia Hui smiled and said, "Let's not talk about other things. This poor monk just saw the Buddhist phenomenon then." Xia Hui began to talk about the Great Snow Mountain with Xian. She narrated the contents of the Buddhist scriptures, the illusions, and her experience. Moreover, there was a trace of the way of karma hidden in her narration. Xiaohua didn't care at first, but as he listened, Xiaohua's ears perked up. In the end, Xiaohua also interjected from time to time. The two were actually debating. The hidden immortal continent was different from the Donrang continent. Whether it was Confucian cultivators, Buddhist cultivators, or demons, the cultivation methods were all different. Although there were some methods to distinguish the cultivation level of each other, most of the time this method could not be taken seriously. Even pressure, primordial thought, divine thought, and Buddhist awareness could not be used as the standard to measure the cultivation level of a person or demon. The only way to test the cultivation level was to compete. Therefore, Xiaohua did not have an estimate of Xia Hui and Xian's strength. Similarly, the two of them also did not have an estimate of Xiaohua's strength. Especially Xia Hui. She could not perceive the depth of Buddhist cultivation level from Xiaohua at all. However, even though Xiaohua called himself a little monk, his bearing was so calm. It was very obvious that his strength was not inferior to her and Xian's. In fact, just from the fact that she could not perceive Xiaohua's Buddhist cultivation level, Xia Hui already knew that if Xiaohua did not have a trace of Buddhist cultivation level, then he had strength that surpassed her. Although Xiaohua kept saying that he had just entered the Buddhist sect, entering the Buddhist sect and having Buddhist cultivation level were two different things. Xiaohua obviously belonged to the latter. And for Xiaohua, a Buddhist disciple who knew Buddhist cultivation level, but did not understand Buddhist doctrine, how could Xia Hui not have the idea of feeding the tiger with her body? Wanting to rely on her earnest advice to let the Pure Land world have another Buddha, with profound Buddhist doctrine and outstanding Buddhist techniques? Not to mention Xia Hui breaking down Buddhist doctrine for Xiaohua, and not to mention Xian, urging the strange bird to fly in front of them. The mountain range below the three of them overlapped one after another. Let's talk about a secluded place in front of the three of them, which was currently bustling with noise and excitement. This was a foothill that was flourishing with flowers. For mountain peaks that were like weights poked out of the sea of flowers. The mountain peaks were also covered with green pines and green cypresses. The sounds of apes and birds chirping could be heard from time to time from the mountain peaks. Moreover, a burst of fog was like a veil swaying in the wind, gradually covering the entire mountain peaks. However, in just a moment, rays of sunlight were cast down from the thick clouds. It was like a huge light sword piercing through the fog. The fog rolled and rolled, revealing the mountain peaks and rocks. The sunlight passed through the fog and shone on the mountain stream. The mountain stream looked very deep, but a stream of mountain spring gushed out from various parts of the mountain stream, emitting a gurgling sound. It was like the weeping of a woman alone in her boudoir, but also like the flute playing by a Confucian scholar's lips. With great difficulty, the sunlight fell on the mountain stream's spring water. The mountain rocks in the spring water were rugged, shattering the golden light. Bits and pieces of crystal scattered on the surface of the water, making people feel intoxicated. The spring water gurgled as it fell into the mountain stream and converged into a pool. The pool water was long and there were duckweeds floating in it. Occasionally, one or two small fish with silver-white bellies would happily swim out from the depths of the pool. They drew two light lines on the surface of the pool before suddenly disappearing. The pool was located in the depths of the mountain stream, and the sunlight couldn't reach it. If the clouds didn't block the sunlight, wisps of water vapor mixed with white mist would seep out from the four walls of the mountain stream at some point in time, covering the pool as well. Seeing the mist that was as ethereal as immortal clouds appear, an old man in a green Taoist robe suddenly appeared on a protruding stone wall at the top of the pool. This old man's hair and beard were all white, and his face was thin. His eyes were slightly closed, but the two palms outside of his Taoist robe were abnormally white. Although he was very thin, the veins on his skin were clearly visible, like the veins of jade. The moment the old man in the Taoist robe appeared, he slightly opened his mouth and let out a toad-like cry. Then, the white fog and water vapor above the pond rushed into his mouth like a waterfall. In a moment, the entire mountain stream was devoid of water vapor, revealing the dark green pond from before. The old man in the Taoist robe did not stop. He patted his forehead, and a dragon-shaped brilliance rushed out from the top of his head. After the brilliance, a mist mixed with water droplets also roared into the sky, like a real dragon sitting cross-legged above the mountain stream. After a moment, the old man in the Taoist robe opened his eyes and recited a mantra. The dragon-shaped mist suddenly stopped and instantly turned into thousands of water droplets that fell down, hitting the stone wall and the pond. Alas! Water vapor convergence, water vapor convergence. The old man in the Taoist robe looked at the water droplets that turned into mist. He sighed and said to himself, "This old man has already cultivated the water vapor convergence. But why can't I understand the meaning of this water vapor convergence? Is it possible that the water vapor convergence of Confucian cultivators has another essence? Is there a mystery that this old man doesn't know? This is impossible. The Liao family's cultivation method may have a problem, but the Long River's cultivation method can't have a problem, right? Their cultivation methods are similar with only minor differences. But since the cultivation method is correct, this old man's cultivation method also has no problem? Why doesn't this water vapor convergence have any special power?" As the old man spoke, he waved his hand and a 2-foot-long nascent soul came out of the old man's head. The nascent soul was wearing a treasure armor and was holding a ruler that was a few inches long. The ruler gave off a cold blue light. As soon as the old man's nascent soul appeared, it immediately threw the ruler in its hand. Its two small hands rubbed slightly. A blue brilliance emerged from the nascent soul's hand. As the nascent soul waved its hand, the blue brilliance fell into the deep pool. But a burst of roaring sound came from the pool. The entire pool swelled up as if the whole pool was boiling. The nascent soul opened its eyes. Its starry eyes flashed with a green brilliance. Then the nascent soul raised its hand. The entire pool of water rushed out like a giant python. It was 100 times more arrogant than the water vapor and mist from before. Boom! With a loud sound, the pool of water hit the stone wall. The entire stone wall turned into powder, and half of the stone wall shook slightly. Then, like a child playing, the nascent soul controlled the huge anaconda to dance around the mountain stream and the mountain peak. Wherever the anaconda passed, whether it was the tough mountain rocks or the thick trees, they were all turned into powder. Occasionally, the birds that flew over the mountain stream were also crushed by the anaconda and turned into blood foam. Seeing the water python's power, the old man's nascent soul didn't rejoice. Instead, he sighed and muttered to himself in a sharp voice, "Our Dao sect's simple spell is more powerful than water essence convergence. Why was our Dao sect destroyed by Confucian cultivators? That bullshit water vapor convergence is regarded as a classic by countless Confucian families, but in this old man's eyes, it is so childish and laughable." The old man's nascent soul seemed to be very depressed. It withdrew its hand and the blue brilliance disappeared. The nascent soul sitting in the old man's hair also withdrew into the old man's body. It was as if thousands of waterfalls were pouring down. The water that was still raging in midair suddenly fell from midair. Not only did it cause the trees around the mountain stream to sway, even the water droplets splashed up from the mountain stream were comparable to a rainstorm. Just as the old man's nascent soul disappeared, and he opened his eyes, a powerful divine sense swept across the sky and the mountain before landing on the old man's body. Who is it? The moment the old man sensed the divine sense, it was as if he had been bitten by a poisonous snake. He immediately flew up from the rock and ignored the water vapor that still covered the mountain stream. His face was filled with extreme shock as he looked at the source of the divine sense in disbelief and shouted, Who else could it be? Naturally, it's this old man." A thunderous voice came from the horizon. Chapter 3409. You. Who are you? The old man seemed to be unfamiliar with this voice and asked with a trembling voice. Then he clapped his hand without hesitation and a fist-sized, dark green spider appeared in his hand. Puff! The old man opened his mouth and a ray of blue light landed on the spider. The spider suddenly grew until it was several dozen feet long. At the same time the spider transformed, the old man's body also emitted a brilliance. When the old man landed on the spider's back, wisps of water vapor flew out from the spider's body. Like a fountain, they shot high into the air and landed on the mountain ridges around the mountain stream. Swoosh! Gently, like the sound of water. Where the water vapor landed, streaks of water blue brilliance spread out in all directions. In just a short moment, the 4 mountains that were like weights were covered by the water blue brilliance. From a distance, this blue light looked like a spider web, and the spider under the old man was the owner of this web. Haha. Little heaven-flipping brat, you're still so cowardly. You're just as the others said. There was no trace of the voice. Even though the old man spread his divine sense out for several hundred kilometers, he still couldn't see anything. However, this voice was so arrogant that it seemed to be right next to the old man. The old man's face became a bit ugly and he coldly shouted, "Which celestial friend has come to visit my 4-flat mountain? Since you're here, don't be so sneaky. Otherwise, don't blame this old man for not giving you face." "Ha ha ha, this old man wants to come. Do I still need you to give me face?" The voice laughed loudly, causing the blue light to tremble. "Rise!" The old man sneered and waved his hand. A water blue brilliance rushed forward and turned into a flying sword of more than 100 feet in size. With a woo sound, it swept across the air. Although it didn't hit anything, the spiritual chi of heaven and earth exploded in the space of about 100 feet. The momentum was extremely vast. "Haha, little guy, this old man hasn't arrived yet. Why are you wasting your spiritual energy like this?" The voice still had a hint of mockery as it arrogantly laughed. "Could it be that you're welcoming this old man?" The old man in the Taoist robe bit his lip and spread out his divine sense. He was very cautious as he looked around. He didn't believe the words of this voice. Rumble! In less than half a cup of tea's time, the sound of rolling wind and thunder could be heard from the horizon. A group of gray clouds emerged from that place and flew toward the mountain stream with lightning speed. The old man in the Taoist robe looked at the cloud in disbelief. He quickly spread out his divine sense to see what was inside the cloud. However, just as his divine sense touched the cloud, an irresistible force came from the cloud and tore his divine sense apart. The old man in the Taoist robe let out a miserable scream and quickly retracted his divine sense. His originally shocked face was now as white as snow. Haha. Just you, a nascent soul cultivator, you dare to spy on this old man? The voice like rumbling thunder came from the gray cloud. Who are you? The old man in the Taoist robe stomped on the spider, and a green light surrounded the old man. Only then did he gnash his teeth and shout. As he spoke, the gray cloud had already arrived next to the four mountains. The cloud violently churned, and the face of a young man appeared in the air. The mouth formed by the cloud opened as if it wanted to devour the four mountains. He said, "You don't need to know who this old man is. Even if this old man told you my name, you might not know it. All you need to know is that this old man is a Taoist cultivator, and you are a disciple of my Taoist sect." This old man is naturally a disciple of the Taoist sect, but this old man doesn't want to interact with other Taoist sect disciples. This old man only wants to cultivate in peace. Although fellow Taoist is a senior of my Taoist sect, you can't force me to do something I don't want to do. The old man in the Taoist robe wasn't afraid at all. He looked at the face formed by the cloud and coldly spoke. Since this old man was suppressed in the eye of the West Ocean, how did the Taoist sects of the three continents become so cowardly? The face formed by the gray cloud snorted. There are simply too many cowards like you. You only care about your own cultivation, and never care about the lives of others. You hide the arrogant heads of our Taoist sect in your turtle shells. This is why those immature scholars of the Confucian sects, and those shameless monks of the Buddhist sects can trample our Taoist sect under their feet. If you all had a strong heart, our Taoist sect wouldn't have fallen to this state. When the old man in the Taoist robe heard this, he was first stunned and then as if he had been struck by lightning, he stood there in a daze. He looked at the cloud with absolute astonishment and said "you" several times. However, in the end he didn't dare to call out this person's name. It was clear that this person's name was extremely famous, and he absolutely didn't dare to call out his name. I didn't think that after all these years, this old man's name is still so famous. Fantion brat. It seems like this old man found the right person to look for you today. The cloud seemed to be frozen in midair. Although there were gusts of wind, it couldn't blow away a single strand of cloud. The voice that was like rolling thunder was heard again and arrogantly. "Since you know who this old man is, there's no need to call out my name. The South Continent is the territory of that old monk. He has cultivated the 6 Buddhist divine abilities to the extreme. It's not easy for this old man to take the risk to come here. If you call out my name, that old monk might hear it." Hearing this, the old man named Fantion bit his lips slightly. His expression was uncertain as he stared at the cloud. No one knew what he was thinking. However, a moment later, a trace of mockery appeared on the old man's face. He let out a cold snort and said, "Senior, no matter who you are or why you're here, I'm not interested at all. In my eyes, there's only cultivation and the heavenly Tao. It's my luck to be able to enter the Taoist sect, but everything in the Taoist sect has nothing to do with me. The rise and fall of the Taoist sect isn't something I can influence, nor is it something you can decide. There's no need for you to say anything more. If you don't have anything else to say, please forgive me. I'm going to cultivate." After he finished speaking, the old man cupped his hands towards the clouds. Then, his body flashed with a blue brilliance as he descended towards the mountain peak below. The cloud didn't seem to be angry, and only laughed wildly. "When this old man roamed the 3 continents, you weren't even born yet. You probably know my name, but you don't know my temper, right? To tell the truth, if it was in the past, this old man would immediately kill you because of what you said. Not to mention a mere nascent soul cultivator like you. Even astral and spirit severing cultivators have to be respectful when they see this old man. However, since the Taoist sect has withered and you're a rare nascent soul cultivator in the 3 continents, this old man will tolerate you for a moment. What can you do?" The old man seemed to be absent-minded and turned a deaf ear to the cloud's words. His body quickly sank into the blue light and gradually disappeared. Damn it. When the cloud saw that the old man didn't listen to its orders and was on guard against it, it let out a roar of anger. The entire cloud was like a fountain in a mountain stream and violently swelled. Strands of cloud flowed up and down and quickly expanded. Gray light flickered and turned into black and white at the center of the cloud. The white light soared into the sky and the black light fell. In just a moment, the cloud that was only several tens of feet in size had expanded to several acres in size. Although it wasn't enough to completely cover the 4 mountains, the dark cloud's overbearing aura seemed to have substance as it charged towards the blue light between the 4 mountains. Looking at the water blue brilliance again, it didn't show any weakness. After the old man in the Taoist robe disappeared, rays of brilliance overflowed from the 4 mountain peaks. The water blue brilliance surged and roared like real waves. In a short moment, the water light under the clouds actually rose several zhang high. Moreover, as the water waves surged, the rhythm of the water light released by the 4 mountains gradually became consistent. Under the splendor of the water waves, a whirlpool as thick as a bowl was formed under the impact of the intense water light. Wuwue sound that was even louder than the sound of flowing water came from these vortexes. A huge current of air descended from the sky, and the world's origin energy within several tens of kilometers of the surrounding mountains rushed into these vortexes. As if the wind was helping the waves, the light that was several tens of feet in height rose up once more and soared several tens of feet into the air. Kaka, heaven flipping brat, is this your rippling flood peak formation? From within the cloud, an arrogant voice filled with disdain sounded. It was like the ringing of a golden bell. You're truly a disgrace to my Taoist sect. Can you not use such fancy things? Although your water light looks extremely powerful, in reality, it has already broken down its power. If you meet a strong enemy, they will be able to destroy your weakness in one move. Your water light looks like gold on the outside, but it's rotten on the inside. Wang, the old man in the Taoist robe, didn't reply. However, the tens of thousands of vortexes in the blue light began to vibrate. Before the voice could drift into the distance, the light that was mixed with the thin threads of white light rushed out from the vortexes. Tens of thousands of light pillars condensed into a light pillar that was several tens of acres in size, and brazenly attacked the clouds that were also surging towards the ground. The light pillar's power was so great that the hissing sounds between the tens of thousands of small light pillars resounded throughout the world. Ha ha ha. Interesting. It seems like you still have some tricks up your sleeve. That old voice was still laughing loudly, as if he did not care about such a powerful attack. Sure enough, at the origin of the voice, wisps of pitch-black cloud threads reached down from the cloud layer like densely packed tentacles, welcoming the enormous light pillar. Before the pitch-black cloud threads could come into contact with the light pillar, more completely white cloud threads followed closely behind the black cloud threads and rushed out. Wisps followed by wisps, appearing very strange as they descended. Chapter 34:10. Woo woo. When the light pillar collided with the cloud pillar, it didn't cause a huge wave. Instead, the sound waves that surged between heaven and earth suddenly disappeared, as if something had blocked the source of the sound. Looking at the light pillar that was as bright as a morning star, it seemed to be covered by dark clouds, or even polluted by cloud threads. The black cloud threads first touched the light pillar that was as thick as a bowl, then quickly spread downwards, annihilating the light pillar's aqua blue brilliance. In particular, the weak cloud threads seemed to have the power of 10,000 caddies. When the light pillar's powerful attack came into contact with the cloud threads, it was blocked and couldn't advance even half an inch. The old man in the Taoist robe was slightly shocked. Then, the aqua blue brilliance at the 4 mountain peaks flourished again. However, before the brilliance of the 4 mountain peaks could form a whirlpool to assist in the battle, the white strands of cloud rushed into the pitch-black strands of cloud, instantly dyeing the top of the gigantic light pillar into a grayish-white color. Schwa, like the sound of a clear spring washing away sand and dust, or like millions of young silkworms swallowing mulberry leaves, layer after layer of sound filled the sky. Looking at the light pillar that had just been covered, it instantly collapsed. Inch by inch, foot by foot, and foot by foot, it turned into nothingness. Strangely, the light pillar wasn't completely destroyed, but was instead sucked into the gray cloud threads. In a moment, the cloud threads grew bigger and thicker. The old man in the Taoist robe turned pale with fright. What method is this? Kaka, my Taoist sex methods are heaven-defying. How could a nascent soul cultivator like you know? The arrogant voice sounded from the clouds again. This old man has only recovered 10 to 20%. It's more than enough to subdue you. Senior, the old man in the Taoist robe was only dazed for a moment. Then he said coldly, Senior is my Taoist sex teacher. And I also know that Senior has been suppressed by Confucian and Buddhist cultivators for tens of thousands of years. No matter what, it's still a meritorious service to my Taoist sect, so I didn't dare to use my full strength for fear of hurting Senior. Just now I've already made my thoughts clear. I only want to cultivate quietly, comprehend the will of heaven, and feel the will of the earth, and walk on the great path of Taoist cultivation. I don't want to participate in the battle between Taoists and Buddhists. Ha ha ha, heaven-flipping brat. That voice sounded like it had descended 10 feet into the clouds, and was much louder. When the nest is overturned, there are no eggs left intact. Do you really believe in the benevolence of the Buddhist monks? Their benevolence is for those who are loyal to them. Even if they were to give a portion to those demons, they would never give it to us Tao sect disciples. Don't think that those hypocrites will let you go just because you fled to the pure land of ultimate bliss and the hidden immortal continent. Don't think that those old bald donkeys of the Buddhist sect will tolerate you if you stay in the Four Extremes Mountains. Your actions would be laughable in the eyes of others, and your thoughts would be childish in the eyes of others. You are only a nascent soul cultivator now. Wait until you reach a higher level of enlightenment, and reach the leaving aperture stage. Then let's see what those old bald donkeys are capable of. Do you know what it means to subdue demons? Do you know what thunderbolt wrist is? You will be the devil in the future. You will be the monster under the thunderbolt wrist. At this point, the voice could not help but sigh. Back then, didn't I have the same thoughts as you? I thought that as long as I cultivated a supreme divine ability, I would be able to lead the 3 continents and revive our Tao sect. However, I was wrong. Although a single person's strength can reach the heavens, there is more than one person who can reach the heavens. That is why it is difficult to do things alone. Before I could cultivate to the great success stage, the Confucian cultivators and the Buddhist sect found out about me. Even the 1,000 demons sacred realm intervened. I don't want to talk about the specific details, but I believe there are many legends about me in the 3 continents. Therefore, when I escape this time, the first thing I want to do is to recover my cultivation. The second thing I want to do is to unite the Tao sect cultivators of the 3 continents. I want to gather all the strength of our Tao sect to fight against the Confucian cultivators and the Buddhist sect. As long as the Tao sect rises, I will be able to reach the great success stage. Only when I reach the great success stage can the Tao sect rise. As the voice came out of the clouds like a gust of wind, the black and white clouds of the devouring light pillar slowed down. Rather than saying that it was devouring, it was more like a deterrent to the Tao sect cultivator named Overturn the Heavens. Unfortunately, Overturn the Heavens only pondered for a moment before saying faintly, I am just an ordinary Tao sect cultivator. I only want to learn divine abilities and be free in the world. I am not interested in the battle between the Confucian and Buddhist sects. Moreover, I have many good friends in both the Confucian and Buddhist sects. They all know what I am thinking. I don't think I will end up like you, in the state of being unjust and lacking support. You are a man of great talent and vision. You should find other Tao sect cultivators who are as ambitious and idealistic as you. I only want to stay in a corner. You, the voice roared, causing the clouds to sway violently. Little Overturn the Heavens, don't think that I don't have any generals to send. Don't think that I don't care about your little bit of cultivation. Don't think that I don't know the little tricks you have in your heart. Overturn the heavens, overturn the heavens. Didn't that mean overturning the heavens of the 3 continents? Do you think that no one would know that you're trying to hide something? Flipping Sky's voice was still indifferent. Flipping Sky is just a Taoist name. There will be 100 interpretations among 100 people. According to what Senior said, it should be a complete upheaval, right? It can't be overturn the heavens, overturn the heavens, overturn the heavens, but it means to freely overturn the heavens and earth. There's no point in saying anything more. This old man has already tolerated you for a long time. The reason why I'm not willing to kill you is that you're a talented cultivator with great potential in my Tao sect. Moreover, you're in the Pure Land world and your identity isn't eye-catching. I want you to do something for me. Since you don't like toasting, then this old man can only let you taste the taste of a forfeit. After saying that, the black and white clouds suddenly emitted a bright light and pressed down several times faster than before. The splendor of the blue light pillar suddenly dimmed by a lot. Your Excellency, you're forcing my hand. Flipping Sky's voice was not afraid, and he also changed the Senior to Your Excellency, as if Flipping Sky had other means to fight to the death. Haha. Little Flipping Sky, this old man has already said what needs to be said. If you're willing to die together with this old man, then it's your honor. But since this old man dared to come, why would I be afraid of your insignificant means? And Flipping Sky snorted coldly. Ka, a strange sound came from the depths of the blue light, and then layers of pale light emerged from the blue. In an instant, the light pillar that was more than 10 acres in size actually condensed into a white ice pillar, and an indescribable coldness was emitted from this ice pillar. This coldness was so terrifying. Not only did the vegetation and rivers within the 4 mountains more or less turn into ice beads, even the surface of the mountain rocks had crystallized. As the light pillar condensed into an ice pillar, the devouring of the black and white clouds came to an abrupt stop. Layers of clouds rolled on top of the ice pillar, and could not press down even half an inch. Not only that, with a loud woo sound, the ice pillar that was more than 10 acres in size slowly shook, and the pale white splendor overflowed rapidly. A fist that was more than 10 acres in size gradually took shape, and punched towards the huge cloud in the sky, as if it was going to shatter the sky with a punch. Hee, this is the ice bead, right? The voice in the cloud sneered. This thing is merely a pellet in this old man's eyes. You use your sea measuring ruler. Only your natal magic weapon can resist this old man for a moment. Flipping Sky's expression was as usual, and he was not moved at all. He did not even say a word, and only focused on urging his mana. Following this sneer, the huge cloud layer suddenly shrank, and the black and white clouds condensed together once again. The clouds rolled, and the wind howled. However, other than the howling of the wind, the clouds did not emit any power, and even the brilliance commonly used in Tao sect's remarkable powers did not appear. Compared to the punch below the clouds, which had the power to destroy the heavens and earth, the difference was too great. Below the clouds, the frozen fist shot up 1,000 feet, and every strand of ice that flickered with a pale white brilliance contained a huge amount of heaven and earth's spiritual energy. Below the ice pillar, a white bead the size of a bowl was spinning around. Below the white bead, there was a 3-foot baby that looked exactly like Flipping Sky. His face was flashing with a green brilliance, and his chubby hands were trembling slightly as he rubbed them together. The ruler that he was holding previously had disappeared. When the clouds had shrunk to a certain extent, they suddenly became transparent. Inside, an exceptionally bright white and black brilliance was born, just like 2 different colored suns. As soon as the brilliance was born, the clouds instantly stopped shrinking, and then rolled at an extremely fast speed. A huge black and white hand several acres in size was formed from the clouds, and grabbed towards the huge fist that was soaring into the sky. Puff! The huge hand grabbed onto the huge fist, and there was a loud noise. Countless waves of air rolled, and the spiritual energy that had gathered in the sky instantly turned into a gust of wind that whistled and blew away. Within hundreds of miles, sand and pebbles were blown away, and everything was chaotic. Not only that, although the huge fist was unusually cold, and contained a terrifying amount of heaven and earth spiritual energy, once it came into contact with the huge black and white hand, it immediately melted like an ice pillar under a raging fire. Almost as soon as the palm landed, the fist disappeared, and in the blink of an eye, more than 40% of the ferocious fist had disappeared. Yin Yang Illustration Handbook. You. Not only did you break free from the Yin Yang illustration handbook's suppression, you actually refined it? An extremely surprised and small voice cried out in disbelief. Under the huge fist, Flipping Sky's Yuanying's face was pale, and a stream of light blue blood was seeping out from the Yuanying's mouth and nose. The ice bead that was previously the size of a bowl on top of the Yuanying's head had now turned into a thumb-sized ice dregs. It was even lighter than a goose feather as it floated in mid-air, as if the huge hand had not only destroyed the ice pillar, but also the ice bead under the ice pillar. You're tuning in to the Li Mei's Wuxia Whispers YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.